Yeah.
now.
Yes, I do.
You've been doing pretty well with art.
Yeah, I've been doing
which is
well.
amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised, I guess. I don't know if it's been an interesting journey. Yeah. I feel like I wasn't expecting, I didn't know what direction I was going to go after school.
Well,
So,
let's start from, first of all, who you are, how we know each other.
yeah.
And then I just want to hear about your life with art and where it started, some middle ground spots, and then where you are now.
Sure.
Which seems like a really wonderful journey you've been on.
Yes. Yeah, it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
And I just want to go ahead and say that you're an amazing artist.
Thank you.
Your attention to detail is very good. I mean, that's why when I was trying to think of that painting of Bo, who to ask, because at the time I knew a lot of artists, I instantly thought of you because I saw your ability already, and that was
a long
5 or 6
time.
years ago.
That was 5 years ago, and I was not doing anything similar to what I'm doing now. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Wow. So you grew up in Chicago. Let's tell everyone who you are.
yeah. I'm Julia Hagen. I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago in Northfield. So Northfield's like a weird spot because it's a really small town, but it's like outside of Chicago, so it has like that small town vibe, but it's like near a big city. So grew up with in a small community, was kind of always, there's only 50 kids in my class growing up, and so I was always the artist of the group kind of. So from a young age I was like, oh, Julia's the artist or whatever, because there was nobody else was doing that. So kind of was an established thing from when I was young, growing up there.
Anybody in your family artists?
My grandma dabbles. My dad, I would say, nobody if legit, just sort of they have a creative streak. My mom has always been very crafty, but
Something
not
that
really.
if they honed in and worked on that, they probably would have developed more.
I think so. I think my dad's an excellent writer.
Okay.
So just a different medium. And I would even say my brother's creative in his own way. I think everybody has some creativity in them. I just think we all grew up, my dad grew up in very much a blue collar home, and it was kind of you gotta work and do mainstream jobs. And my dad was a banker and my mom's a banker, so I mean they were very encouraging of the creativity, but were a little hesitant on how that was going to translate to a career. So I would say I never in my wildest dreams thought I was going to actually be an artist when I grew up. I was I like art, that'll be my hobby, but I have to do a real big girl job when I'm older. So I actually started out in med school, or not med school. No, I didn't skip undergrad. I was in pre-med at Boston College, and I went there and I immediately knew. I was this is not this is not for me.
I didn't know this. You
No.
went to Boston
Yeah.
to do pre-med.
Yeah, I was pre-med. Yeah.
That's so fascinating.
Because I was always good in school. I think my dad and my mom were just very much work hard, get good grades, go to a good college, get a good job. And so I was okay, yeah, sure. And I, got good grades, and I got into Boston College, which was a pretty hard school to get into at the time. I think it still is. But I was oh, okay, I have to go there because it's the best school you get into, And I was I have to go there. And then I was what's the hardest thing I can pick to do? Or what's the most oh, that'll be a good job. I was oh, I'll do pre-med, I guess.
Do you know what kind of doctor you wanted to be?
I don't even think I wanted to be a doctor.
How did you get this in your head if you didn't want to be a doctor? It's such a
I don't know.
It's a radical decision. Doctor, lawyer, anything that's 6, 7, 8, 10 years of college.
Yeah.
I don't know how people wing that,
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think I knew deep down that I wanted to do art, but that really scared me. So I was what can I do that's a very clear route? This is going to be a very clear route. And then it just seemed kind of safe in a funny way at the time. I just think I went to college really scared and not knowing what I wanted to do. And so picking something that had such a pre-scripted path felt like a good idea. And then I immediately regretted it, and I hated it. I hated it. And I was in the library all night long, and it just was like you said, something like that you're going to dedicate 10 years of your life to. You have to be pretty committed and like this is what you want to do. And I
Yeah.
very quickly realized like, no, I'd rather channel this towards something I
Were
actually
you
want to
painting
do.
at the time?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't have any time to. So I was really, just to be blunt, like depressed and just like, I don't like any of this. I'm spending all these hours doing things I didn't like doing. And I just was like, I'm going to pivot. And I was like, I'm going to take a break from school. So I did a leave of absence. And I was like, I think I want to do art. I don't know what that's going to look like. My parents were like, okay, I guess just come home. And then I toured SAIC and I was like, this looks cool. I'll go here. And that's how I ended
The
up.
opposite of med school
Yeah,
is
the
the Art Institute of
opposite.
Chicago.
Yeah. So I did a complete 180. Everyone thought I was insane. I thought I was insane. And I was like, I guess I'm here now,
That's so wild.
Yep.
What year did you start college?
2014.
14. Okay, so you started 14.
Mm-hmm.
I think I met you in 20, was it 16?
Yeah, I think 2016 maybe, or late
It's when I was a
2015.
TA at the Art Institute. So yeah, now we can get to how I
Yeah,
met you.
here we are. The
I was a
long origin
graduate
story.
student there. So I was a teacher's assistant for, I think, was it cinematic sound or was it sound and image?
I think I took both, and I think you were my TA twice.
I was.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed those classes because it was, I got to like take them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to like help out a little bit here and there, but I really, is like, I got to take free classes and get paid.
I thought it was funny because I think I didn't realize you were the TA for a little while because like you were very much like a lot of the TAs I feel like are like checked out, but you were like engaged
I
and
was.
stuff. So I was like, oh, he must be a student, not the TA.
I like to learn, and I've always been really fascinated with sound for film.
Yeah.
I'm very much into that. I've been wanting to do that kind of work for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought like I can either take, because graduate students can take those classes, and I was
Right.
like, I can either take it or I can like take it, get
Right.
paid to be a TA and still take it, still pay attention, ask questions, show up. And that was so much fun doing that. And obviously being a TA, you learn a little bit more by engaging with students and the professor. They give you some extra work to do. But it was nice to take like these classes / get paid to take
Yeah.
classes. So you take, what department did you go into?
And I was undecided.
Undecided?
I think I had in high school. I had done mostly painting. They didn't offer like sound or sculpture or things like that. I went to like a private, like Jesuit high school. So like art was like the smallest department. It was like not really like paid attention to. So I just did painting and I was like, okay, I like doing this. And so I just applied with like the paintings I had done in school. But I was very much like, I don't know what I want to do. Like I'm going to try everything. So that's kind of how I ended up in sound. I was like, I'm going to try a bunch of stuff and just see what I like.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you took other sound courses?
I did. Yeah, I think I'm actually like, I don't know. I took so many different classes. I didn't really have a strong focus. Sound was like a pretty large chunk of like the courses I took.
Yeah,
actually.
remember
Yeah.
you being into it. And I was confused because I saw you painted, but I was like, do you paint?
Yeah.
Are you in the sound?
I was very confused.
Yeah. Well, you were just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
That school's kind of cool for it because it's very interdisciplinary,
Yeah.
and you can take whatever and it still counts towards your degree. You don't have
Yeah.
to be in one spot, which is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think it's a good, I go back and forth on it. I'm like, okay, I really, if I could do it all over again, wish I could have been more focused. But at the same time, I think I would have burnt out from painting. Like, because the painting department was very intense at SAIC. Like, they had,
That's their biggest one.
it's their biggest one. And I think, honestly, it was sort of like a blessing in disguise that I was like, I'm going to just try a bunch of different things. Because when I left school, I was like, oh, I kind of fell back in love with painting again. And I think if I had just done painting in school, I think
It would have
yeah,
overdone it for you.
I think so.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
For those listening, we're talking about the Art Institute of Chicago.
Yeah,
we
I
say
just-
SAIC so fast,
I know.
it could be confusing to people.
It does sound-
It was until I went there when people would say it growing up.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were talking about. But
Yeah. And then a lot of people now will be like AIC, and I'm like, or Arctic or whatever. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's so many different
yeah, the
abbreviations.
School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
It's
It's the
just
school associated with the museum.
It's just a mouthful. Yeah.
And it is a very, well, I'd like to hear your thoughts. So I grew up also in a very working class, blue collar family. You said you did too.
Yeah, my parents like kind of made it. Like, they like were my parents were both bankers, but they came from like,
So they came from that.
Yeah.
But did they go to school for financing or banking?
Yeah, they
Okay,
did.
so
Well,
they kind of hopped ahead.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was more like their roots, but not as much your roots.
Not as much my roots, but
theirs,
just
okay.
like, but that was like their mentality was like, you gotta, if you want to be successful, this is the way you gotta do
Got
it.
it.
Because we were successful when we did it this way.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they had a little bit of both
Yeah.
feet in each pond of like
Yeah.
a white collar, blue collar.
Yeah.
Mine was just blue collar. My parents didn't go to school. They didn't have those jobs. So going to the Art Institute, I think you know where I'm going with this, was a shock to my system.
Yes.
When it comes to be honest, just money.
Yeah.
Like holy money.
Yes.
That school.
Yes.
And the student body was very wealthy. And I worked so much, and people would just go travel for the summer, and I'm like working, and they're like, "What'd you do this summer?" I was like, "I worked like every day," and they're like, "Oh, I went to Europe." I'm like, "What?
What's going on?
How do you get anything done? Just like doing whatever you want?" It was weird to me, but how did you feel about it?
I think I was a little more accustomed to that because of growing up in the North Shore, even though like that's not how my parents really operated, because of just like they're very like money conscious, and like we never
Bankers.
did like like we would do occasionally like a nice vacation here or two, but like it wasn't like the neighbors who were jetting off to like their private island or something like insane.
What neighborhood did you, or what city? Did you
Northfield is the where I grew up. It's like kind of near Kenilworth, which is like the really like bougie.
How far is that from like Highland Park or Lake Forest?
Close. I mean, it's kind of those are further north, but I was like around that. Like, but Northfield was weird because there were a lot of like, it was a little bit more mixed in terms of like middle class, but like around us, like one of our friends in school like literally had a house on a private island, and I was like, okay.
I've spent a lot of time in Lake Forest.
Yeah.
As of recently, and that place blows my mind.
It's insane.
I've never seen so many nice cars in my life.
No, it's definitely like
It's just
it's a weird thing to grow up around. And then I think in art school, what was weirdly even weirder about it was like it almost felt like an elevated version of it, because let's be honest, like art is expensive. It's a luxury. Like what I do is a luxury item. Like most people don't buy, like, a lot of people don't buy original art. And so, it was like this weird thing of like nobody talked about money in terms of like selling art and trying to make a living as an artist. It was almost just like not talked about, I felt like at SAIC.
yeah, it was just hush hush. You just didn't talk about it.
Yeah, but it was just like this like art in the purest form.
Yeah.
And then there was no acknowledgement of like how you're gonna actually make a living doing this.
It was never talked about.
And then everybody just like had money, and I was like, okay, well, how do you get the money? Because I don't have the money, yet. So
That's very true. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Even in the graduate programs, money was never talked about. No one ever taught you how to build a portfolio and a CV to pitch it to try to get jobs, and it was just about art and expression, which is great because it helps you to focus on that. But it's a luxury, as you said. It's it's very much a thing that not everyone's capable of having, and I knew that really well coming from where I came from. But I was confused. I was very torn between worlds. I'd be at the Art Institute all day, meeting world-renowned artists and all these amazing artists, and walking around the museum between classes for free because you're a student there, being around priceless art, millions of dollars worth of art. And then I'd go home to like where I lived, this old house, I had to fix this, fix that. I couldn't relate to what I just learned and how to talk about it with like my roommates. We were of that same world. So I felt very torn between like the working class blue collar and then
this like very elevated,
elegant, elite, wealthy world of fine art. Fine art.
Fine art.
The most fine art of the world.
Yeah. And it was, I kind of, when I left school, was like really grossed out by it, if I'm being honest. Like I was like, I also had so much like imposter syndrome after leaving there of like, well, I can't get into like those high-end galleries yet because like I just have a BFA. Like that's another thing. They kind of gaslight you into thinking that like if you don't have an MFA, you're not good enough to.
Yeah,
it's like
they do.
Because they want you to come back and spend more money.
Another
to get
$120 grand.
Exactly. So I was like, oh my God, I have to go back because I'm not good enough yet. So like I already felt like I'm not good enough. it's kind of like if I can't be in the high-end gallery, I might as well just not paint at all, was kind of like how I felt almost, which is ridiculous. And then everyone kept telling me around me was like, well, why don't you just do like art festivals? And I was like, no, that's too lowbrow. Like, no, I can't do
That's
that.
like being in a cover band if you're a musician.
Yeah, I was like, no, I could never do, no. I was like, that's me. I'm so embarrassing. Like, I wouldn't want anyone to know, like, that I went to art school with, that I did an art festival. And then at a certain point, I was like, that is, like, I started to hear myself. I'm like, that is the most egotistical thing ever. Like, that is so ridiculous. Like, you have to start somewhere. And so I just really, like, had to do lots of like unlearning of some of the bullshit that I learned
Yeah.
at SAIC that I felt like kept me back from like trying to, get my name out there in like kind of scrappy ways.
And you're what, 22, 23 when you
At the
finish?
time, yeah, exactly, 22.
You're 26, 27
26
now?
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 32. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, it's so nice to hear you say this. I have very few people on this planet I can talk to about this
Yes,
stuff.
I know.
I didn't expect it to be on camera on a mic, but
Yep.
it's very true. I couldn't agree more. It had I loved the school I had. The facilities were phenomenal. The as a graduate student, the private studios, it was endless. I had a studio on top of a studio, then go to that studio, and it's just for me.
Right.
Or my sound team, and the sound team was like 6 people.
Yeah.
So essentially it's for you. And it was amazing. And the people that would come guest speak, and the events were top notch. The location, top notch. Free access to this world-renowned museum, top notch.
Yeah.
But that doesn't cover up the fact that you can feel a little odd, alienated.
Yeah.
Again, the money thing, it's almost expected everyone just has it, I guess. If you
Yeah.
can go there, they assume you have it. I don't know.
There didn't seem like there was a lot of urgency, like of how that I don't know. Actually, I take it back. Some of my like immediate friends, like we would talk about, like, okay, well, how am I going to make this work, like after school, like, but in the classroom, like, there was never like an acknowledgement of like, how are we gonna?
Did you ever have any professors who were kind of not like that, and they're a little bit more?
Yeah, I had a couple, but they never were in the painting department. They were
Okay.
always in like I felt like some of the sound. I'm trying to think of. I feel like I'm forgetting professors' names right now, but they were more so in like the sound and like film space. I felt like there were a couple of those guys. I'd say guys because I feel like there were mostly male professors in that department.
Chris Sullivan, did you ever have him or know him?
I never
Animation?
had him, but yes, I've met him.
He's one of my favorite people I've ever had.
Yeah.
And he's been on this podcast too. Him and I have talked about this a lot. I won't say too much because we talked about it privately, but he's talked about how it's hard too, like even being a professor, if you're not of that world, it's hard to sometimes fit in, even if you are a tenured professor and the director of the video, film, and animation department. You still like can butt heads with that type of world, that mentality of fine art and what people think of stuff. It was difficult. It was definitely not the easiest situation to be in when you don't come from it at all.
Yeah.
But I certainly learned a lot from it. And now when I do find myself in those situations with those people, I can understand. I can relate. I can at least hold my own conversation.
That's kind of how so it's actually really funny. Even before coming here, I was like, okay, we're going to have like a really deep conversation about like the meaning of all my paintings or whatever. Because like, I'm just so used to like in art school having to defend everything that I did there at art school. You know, I felt like everything was like defending your work. Everything was like, why did you do this? And a lot of the time, like after school, I kind of just let myself have fun and be like, I just wanted to paint this. And I felt like a luxury I didn't get in art school because it felt like that was never a good enough reason to make something.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't put into words why something came to you and
Well,
why
also,
you did
like,
it.
I didn't pick to be a writer. I picked being a painter because the words aren't there. You know, like if I could write about it, I probably would. But I decided to make images of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so you get out of the Art Institute and you're 22. And then what happens?
I like kind of freaked out. I was like, what am I going to do? I kind of had like an existential crisis or two where it was also kind of funny just like from a timing standpoint because I graduated earlier than other people. So I graduated a semester early. So I still had friends like still in school finishing up. And I had this like weird semester that was like, I was done with school, but I was like, okay, like trying to figure it out kind of on my own. And I was doing a lot of odd jobs, like mostly babysitting and like nannying and stuff, like house sitting and then painting on my own.
You were doing that in school. I remember you were doing
Yeah,
that.
I was always babysitting
Right.
and stuff. And then I also met at the time my now fiance, and he was also very much figuring out. He was kind of at a weird like impasse in his life. So we both were just very much like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So it kind of was like a weird, like, we look back at that time and we're like, what happened? Like I
Mhm.
will trying to figure out our lives. And I pretty much, there were many points where I had like almost given up the dream. I was like, forget it. Like, I'm going to go back to school to do something completely different. This isn't working. Like, I had so many days where I was like, this is way too hard. But I'm really grateful because Kirk, who's my fiance, he was like, no, you have to keep trying, like, do an art festival. And like, he would talk me off of the ledge of me being like, oh, I can't do an art festival. That's not, sophisticated enough. He's like, just do it.
You really were thinking that?
Yeah, I really was like, I can't do those. They're like they're not like good enough or whatever. It was so dumb.
That's so interesting because
Yeah.
so many amazing artists I know, even who I had at DZ Fest. I mean, I'd have 40 artists sell artwork.
I know. And then, but at SAIC, like in the painting department, like people would make fun of that.
Really?
Yeah. Like that was
That's
like
so arrogant.
It's so
and
arrogant.
pompous and big head. I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
I mean, I could
Yeah.
imagine it. I just wasn't in those places.
Yeah.
But I could imagine it. I mean, it's the way a lot of people feel about, again, like I'm very much in the music world. So musicians, when they think of musicians, they think of people who make their own music. So if you're a cover artist person, people kind of like look down
Down
at
on
that.
you. Yeah.
And it's like, what if you do both and you're doing one to make
Yeah.
money? Because I have a lot of experience with this now, and I'll tell you what, the money's actually in the cover art bands.
Yes. Yes.
Bars will book you and pay you $500 to play.
Yeah.
But you can play your own music at, Shuba's or the Sleeping Village or Empty Bottle, and you'll get paid maybe nothing.
Yeah.
And 10 people come.
Right.
But you go to these cover band bars, which I've worked a lot with bands, and there's, 300 people.
Yep.
You get drinks for free. They give you your $500. Everyone's people are actually watching you play. They love it. So yeah, maybe it's not as creatively rewarding.
Right.
But you can still do that stuff. This is just a great way to pay the bills and
Exactly.
be playing music, be relevant on your instrument,
Yeah.
keep your craft going. So like if you do an art show, it can help keep your craft going where you can have
Exactly.
enough money from it to pay for your supplies because canvas and paints are not cheap.
No.
To do that stuff where you can actually sell your high art, fine art.
Right. Exactly.
It could be a great way to do both to help
It
your
is.
career.
Oh, it's a great thing. And I highly recommend, like, also similar to what you were saying about cover bands with art festivals, it's like, it's not you have to pay to be there. So there is a cost in that from that standpoint.
Right.
And you do have to have like the tent. So there is a bit of a cost, like hurdle.
What do they normally cost?
It really varies, but like the most I've paid was like $700 to
Oh my God,
be there.
really?
Yep.
How many people would be selling art?
Like over 100 people probably there. Yeah, but I mean,
Wait,
so it was like massive.
That's like $70,000.
I know. Yeah.
So when I'm doing it for free and building the tents for artists, I'm doing the Lord's work, huh?
You are doing the Lord's work. Yeah. But the least I've spent was like 200.
still-
So you should definitely be charging maybe like $100 or something like
I
that.
just did it for free. I was like,
You're so kind.
I used to build the tables and provide everything, but then I was like, okay, they could bring their own table,
You're too kind.
and I'll provide the lights and the tent.
They provide literally nothing.
That's why
They provide nothing at all.
Well, I'm glad though because it got artists to be able to sell that normally don't get anything
Which is
or can't
amazing.
afford to get into there because. Say it's an expensive one that's $700.
Yeah.
Plus your tent that they're usually between $100 and $200 for like a 10 by 10 pop up, right? That's what you would
Yeah.
have. And then your folding table, which could be another $100.
Yeah.
I might be helping artists who don't have much money save $1,000.
Oh, absolutely. That's really nice
which
of you.
I could sleep a lot better at night.
Yeah, you should.
Because I know what it's like to be a struggling artist. So
Yeah.
And it was like, this is my space and yard. It's here anyway. I might as well utilize it.
Yeah.
You know, it's no skin off my back to like let people come here for free. And it enriches the festival because now when Intendi goes there are 40 different artists selling artwork that looks so much better than if I charged $100 and I only got 10.
Right.
I rather have it just be completely open to that. But tell me more about these art shows because that's a lot of money. I had no idea.
Yeah. So this is the thing. They're like, they promote the show, but obviously you rely on them to like promote the show and get people there. So that is something that's a big benefit is like, they get people to come and they're sort of like that guaranteed audience.
Yeah.
But the thing is though, is that a lot of these festivals, like it's hard to get into. There's a barrier to entry. Maybe there's artists who have been doing these same festivals for years and years. And for some reason, a lot of these festivals are very like loyal to, I appreciate them being loyal to some of these artists, but they don't always like let new people in because even if they're like great and experienced, which I find it can be a little bit boring or stale. It's like, okay, like you come back year after year and you see the same artists every single year. And so I don't know. So it's like a love-hate I have with art festivals because some of them are really awesome and really well done and clearly have like the artist in mind. Others are definitely more of like a money-making thing.
Make some money, yeah.
Yeah, for them. And so yeah, I am kind of no longer doing art festivals for now just because the overhead is kind of high.
I was just going to ask, are they worth it financially? Like,
It really depends. If you have a really rainy weekend, it can suck and you're like out $700, $300, whatever. Or it can be amazing and you sell like every painting on your wall. And I've had those too.
You've done really well at some of them?
I've done really well at some of them and been like, oh my God, I don't have anything else to put up. This is amazing. And then I've had others where I've sold not a thing. So it just is a total crapshoot from that standpoint. And it's also just like physically exhausting, like, because we have to set up the tent. And the tent is actually like not just one of those pop-up tents. It's like, because I have to hang the things on the wall. So it has like walls and stuff. Like it's like a very like heavy duty tent.
Right.
And you're supposed to leave it overnight with all your art in it.
That's scary.
Which is really scary. Yeah. So it has to be like withstand like wind and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, the festivals are like a whole thing, but I started doing them after school. And that was sort of like where I started though making money as an artist, which is like super validating, right? It's like, oh, people want to buy my art. Like I'm doing something right. It also was a great way, for better or worse, to get people's immediate feedback on your work.
Yeah.
And sometimes, that's good. Sometimes that's bad. But it was a good. You'd be
Don't
so
you just love feedback?
Shocked what some people just will say to you. Like,
give me the
one
best
time,
example.
one time I was like, oh, my granddaughter could draw that. Like someone said that to me once. And I was like, oh. Like, at the time I was doing a little bit more abstract work, but I was like, my God, like you have
That's
no
harsh.
filter. That's very harsh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the hard thing about being an artist. You have to be pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. Put what you spent hours on out there.
Yeah.
It's what I've realized with working with bands, how much of a responsibility I feel capturing it for them. If I'm doing some sound work, engineering work for them, I'm trying my best to capture their hopes and dreams,
right,
and then translate it and like put it out there. So it's a unique sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
When you do the fest, it's like some of these bands never got to play in front of 500, 1,000 people. And so I feel responsible for like giving them the best performance they can do as far as the mixing or the gear. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. But then it's funny when anything I do for my own personal art, like I don't care at all. I think I get so much of that that stress that you're describing from when I'm responsible for doing other people's work that when I do my own, I don't care at all. Like what happens.
Interesting.
If I make one penny or $1 million, if someone cares, if someone said my daughter could do that or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just like, because it means everything to me, it means nothing. There's no value to it. I'm not trying to live off of it. It's completely an elective thing.
That's really nice.
Which it's nice, but it's that's why I like it. I always want to play music, but I never want to like do it for money or get a record deal. I know what that music industry is like to try to get deals and tour the world. It's miserable.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It's really hard. And this is sort of, you're touching on something that I and a lot of like painters, visual artists, I think struggle with is this like, doing it for the money or doing it for, the passion of it. And sometimes those things intersect and it's amazing. Other times, it doesn't. And you do kind of have to like grin and bear it and like take the commission, even if it's like, that's not quite what I want to be doing right now.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of that compromise and, it's not always glamorous, but I always have to remind myself like every job has its things and like the part of your job that is stressful, that's just kind of the part of my job that's stressful,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think majority of the time, if you can find a way, I think that the beginning, it's going to be a lot of that compromise. It's probably going to be a lot of whether you're doing an art festival because you're, like, I don't know, I'm going to give this a try. It may or may not work. There's just so much you have to just like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And that was the best thing I did was I just said yes to like everything. And at first I was really scared, but I just kept saying yes and as much as I could physically do. But I was nannying at the time. And then I got like another like real job, like a 9 to 5 for
What
a
was
little
that?
bit. It was the worst.
Aren't they all though?
No, this was especially bad. I mean, I can tell you more off mic, honestly, but
Okay.
this was, it was so bad. But I was a recruiter.
Okay.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Enough said. That doesn't sound
It was
fun.
horrible. I just was like, basically, I wanted at the time. I was just painting, and I really wanted to rent my own apartment, and I basically needed like a job to like be able to put on the lease. So I
Yeah.
took the job, and then I was like, this will be a short term thing or whatever. And then the pandemic happened, and yeah, anyway, but I was kind of just floating like in terms of making money with art. It was not like I was really making money off of my art until I started doing it full time because I didn't have the time or the energy to be making like a ton of art after work. But I knew that like I kind of had to take a leap of faith. And when I quit my day job, I was like, all right, yeah, no, I'm not. Like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend anyone. This is not good business advice. But I was like, I know I'm not making any, like, real money at art right now. But if I focus my time and energy on this, I think I can make it happen.
Yeah.
So I had, like, a little bit of savings. I had, kind of given myself a cushion there. And then I was like, all right, I have 6 months and I have to make this work. And if I don't make it work in 6 months, then I have to figure something out. So
And what age are you when this happens?
this was 2 years, 24.
24.
I was 24 and I was like, all right, I have to make this work. I mean, I'm making it sound like a lot more dire than it was. I was like, my Kirk, I was living with him. He was like, all right, I can help out if like you need an extra month or two to like get it going. But I was like, all right, I really have to give my all to this and figure it out. And I really leveraged like social media and stuff to get my art seen by people. So
And when in leverage, can you elaborate? What do you mean by that?
yeah, I felt like I was okay, the algorithm is an absolute beast and there's no way of like knowing what's going to like work and what's not. But I think, and also you don't want to be a slave to it and just doing things that are trending. But I think it's important sometimes to pay attention to like what's getting seen or like, is there a trending sound? Is there whatever, what can you use to make your art that's already amazing, just seen by more people, not selling out, not doing anything different, but trying to figure out like, is there a way that I can make this just seen by more people? And it's just, trying to do as much as I could to get people to see my work. So
I need to probably take a note or two from you.
yeah.
I can't tell you how many times for like the last decade that people have said, why doesn't your YouTube channel have more subscribers? Why doesn't your Instagram have more followers? You do so much stuff. You're known by more people in reality than your actual internet presence shows, which is very rare. It's usually
Right.
the opposite for everybody.
Right, yeah.
But not for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, and I'm like, I don't know. I just post stuff and I walk away. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you why. I mean, there's a couple of things. I don't do a lot of what, I'm like an old man. I just don't do a lot of what like people do that come up with social media. They know it. They just like, I don't know. I can't explain it, but it seems like they're onto something more than people who are a little bit older who just like kind of missed that education
Right.
in pop culture and the sociology of it.
I think you have to become a consumer of it.
Yeah, you do.
Which is unfortunate. And I think that's sort of like maybe your issue. I'm not trying to
No,
describe
I
your
think
issue.
you're right.
But it might be your issue is that I was probably, I mean, not necessarily in a healthy way, comparing myself a lot to other artists. I mean, like, what are they doing? What are
Yeah.
they doing? And I was always looking and seeing. And to a certain extent it became toxic, but in another way it was very helpful.
Toxic how?
Toxic just because I was like, oh, like maybe I should like change what I'm doing to look more like what they're doing because they're getting a lot of views. And it was starting to infiltrate my practice, which rather than just using maybe like, oh, the format of their video. And this was more so early on, not currently.
How much time a day like would you spend thinking about it?
A lot. I mean,
So it really was
probably an
toxic in many ways, not just affecting your actual craft,
Yeah.
but your health.
Probably, yeah.
mental
Like
health.
probably an embarrassing amount. I don't really know, but it was sort of like I just kind of knew, especially because of COVID, I couldn't do a lot of these in-person shows. So it really felt like everything was kind of riding on like getting my
Yeah.
art seen.
I don't think it's an embarrassing amount. I think
Yeah.
it's an honest amount because I think
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. A lot of people are. I think about it. I don't know why I can't crack the code, but I certainly think about it. I'm like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much content. I do all these things. How is it not more known? Like, it doesn't make any sense that
Yeah.
more people have been to my home and know about what I do than the internet. Like, that
Right.
is weird.
That is weird. Yeah.
And it's true, and I don't know what to
I
do.
think that says a lot more though.
Yeah.
I genuinely do. I mean, I will tell you, like, I spent so much time thinking about it and like scheming of ways to like, oh, this video will be the one, this one will be the one, this one will do it, this piece of art. And then it was the minute I literally gave up. I was like, excuse me, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast,
You
but I
can
was
say
like,
whatever you
fuck
want.
this. I was like, literally, like, I hate this. I can't do it anymore. And I just was like reposting old things. I was like, I don't have the energy to make new content. I'm really burnt out right now. I'll just repost old things. I'll remix them. I'll do whatever. Taking like kind of like the highlights of what I'd done and just putting those out there. And then those started taking off. And
How many followers were you at when this was going on?
So
this is like beginning of
this-
the pandemic?
No, so this was actually 2021.
Okay.
I had like a solid year of just like not a lot of growth on my social media. And so I became really frustrated because I was like, oh my God, I'm putting so much energy into this. I'm thinking a lot about it. And like I was getting work, like I was making a living, but it was a grind. And I finally was like, okay, honestly, I'm just going to start making whatever I want. And I am going to start, posting as much as possible, but not caring if it's repetitive, not caring if it's, not exactly what the algorithm wants.
Yeah.
And just was posting a lot.
Were you ever obsessed with like the way it looked when all the posts were together?
I stopped at that time. I stopped kind of, but I did just the biggest thing I can suggest is the reels, like cover photos, like just having some photos
That's
that
so
you
true.
just have them all.
It's so funny that you say
Yeah.
that. The most interactions or views I ever got was about a month ago. I posted a video of some footage from this past Easy Fest, but it just so happened to be the footage that we had of when Red Bull showed up. So the image that it was, I was just getting used to reels. I wasn't familiar with them.
Right.
So I'm looking through it. I'm like, oh, I should select a cover for it. I didn't know what to put. And I was like, oh, maybe I should put like the Red Bull can like in my driveway, like the cooler.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I post it, and I look at my phone like an hour later, and it's 13,000 views in 1
Wow.
hour. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Out of everything I've ever posted, it was just another video. It was the same thing, a DZ Fest something. 13,000 views in 1 hour and like 300 likes in 1 hour. I was like, what the heck? Like, this
Yeah.
has never happened. And I think it was just that.
Yeah.
Because it's famous. It's Red Bull.
Red
and it
Bull,
was the
yeah.
cover, and like that's all it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it almost seems unfair.
It's always the dumbest.
It almost
videos.
seems unfair to
It-
like people who work hard at stuff. It's like just because they didn't figure out the right thing, they don't get the It's weird.
It's really weird, and that's why I'm like, it's quantity, over quality on social media.
Yeah, it is.
On social media, which is like nowhere else in real life. It is quantity over quality a lot of the time, unfortunately. And so I kind of started to realize that, and I was like, all right, I'll just like screw it. I'll post it. I'll use that audio. I'll do whatever. And then, I mean, I started out. I had like 2,000 followers. This is in like, this time last year, I had like 2,000 followers,
Which is pretty normal for at the time 25-year-old
yeah.
artist who's been doing it for a couple of years
Yeah.
in the city. That's a lot of people I see that are active are between the like 1,000, 5,000 range.
Right.
A lot.
A lot
so
of
it's
them.
pretty normal.
Pretty normal. And then I just had this one video that got a lot of views. It was a cityscape. And then I think I just used some like trending audio that was sort of like funny. I don't really even remember. And it got like, I think 1 million views.
Oh my
And then I
God.
got I was
Why?
like,
Do you know why?
no, I don't know why. I literally couldn't tell you.
1 million
Yeah.
on Instagram.
On Instagram. That's not even the craziest
So when I go
one.
13,000, you go, nice, Ben. I got 1 million.
No, it was absolutely insane.
Just an anomaly.
An anomaly. And
Huh.
then I had like overnight almost I had like 10,000 followers, and I was like, okay, this is insane.
That's insane.
And I was literally like taking a break from painting, and I was like, this is bizarre. And then started the new year, I was around like 15K then, and then it just kept kind of like snowballing, and I was like, oh, I'll post more. And then I had this one video, or maybe I was like 2 videos simultaneously that kind of like went crazy in
Do you know
May.
why or what you did?
I don't know, other than it was like the dumbest thing. It was me just like turning around a painting. Like,
That's it?
yeah. And it got 10 million views.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
Wait, I've noticed that a reveal thing
yeah,
gets a lot. I don't know why, because it keeps people looking for a little bit longer.
I guess
because they want to see what the
idea.
reveal is.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. It's like super dumb. I don't know.
I sound like an old man. I was like, what is this?
I felt the same way. And when I tell you
10 million.
And so like the one of the video got 1 million likes. And so like my phone was like going
1 million
insane.
likes?
Yeah,
Your phone was glitching?
I was like,
Did
what
you get
is
Did you get
happening?
messages?
I did. A lot of creepy guys.
Oh
But
no. We got to talk about that. Because that's a huge problem, huh?
yes. Yeah.
Like, what were some of the things they were saying or asking? Or
The most of it was just weird. Like, I love you. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, just weird stuff. Like, not even anything like overtly like sexual or anything. Just like, I'm obsessed with you and your art. And I was like, what the hell? So I actually was like really freaked out at first. I was like, I've never had this many people. And I was physically in the video. It was like, because I was showing it.
Yeah.
And I was very uncomfortable with the fact that like people were commenting about like me.
I was like millions.
And I was like, I'm showing the art. I'm just in the video,
Yeah.
because like someone had to turn it, and it'd be weird if I made Kirk do it, because he's not the artist. So I was definitely very like, I had a lot, if I'm being totally honest, like conflicted feelings of like, I'm a young woman and I understand men on the internet. And I was like, are people just following me because like they're weird men on the internet, or do they actually like the art? And I started to get really, and like I wasn't wearing anything like provocative
No,
or anything.
I've looked
like
at your videos. You're just like a
I'm
person.
like just like this
Yeah.
right now. And so I was like, what, so I started to have a lot of like, just being really critical of myself suddenly, of like, oh my God, all these people are seeing me. And like, I never thought about that, because in most of my videos, like, you don't even see my face because I'm just painting and it's my back.
Back, hands, stuff like that.
And whatever.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a weird mind thing that happened around that time for me.
Wow, it
Yeah.
must be.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of women experience this.
Yeah.
Because, like, have you looked, when you were trying to figure out the algorithm and figure it out, were you doing a lot of research about Instagram and Facebook and, like, the times the post? None of that stuff. So I've looked into that stuff.
Yeah.
Out of, like,
I used to, yeah.
when do you post this? When should you do that? Like, why? Like, what are busy times? And a lot of it just out of curiosity. I'm fascinated by these big tech companies and how they work and how it feels so random sometimes. But a big thing I've noticed with art and music and women, and I've talked about this a lot, especially with other female guests who are of the art world, it's a very controversial place.
Yes.
Because if you go one way, and I'm not saying I follow either of this, but if you go one way saying like they're only getting the views and stuff because of them being women and their bodies, then that starts a whole nother bag of worms.
Yes.
And if you're saying like, oh, it's because they're really good, it's not their bodies, like, well, then you're lying, because it's not how society's ever worked.
Right. I'm fully aware of like, I'm somewhere in this weird middle gray area where I'm fully aware that there is probably, I'm a conventionally attractive young white woman. And like, I'll just say that. And I think the internet likes that. And it's fucked up. Like, I don't agree with it. I'm very aware of the privilege of that though. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but so like to say, but I do think a lot of it is the art. Like, I do think that there is, mostly it's the art. But I think that there's just this, I don't know. I've definitely had like conflicted feelings about it, if I'm being like totally candid, where I'm like, am I doing something wrong? But it's like, this is who I am, like I can't
I mean,
really.
at the end of the day, you're just being yourself. You're not like flashing skin or,
Yeah.
promiscuous clothes. You're just being yourself.
Right, right.
Which, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of hard to think about. I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And it's kind of funny, like, it's so funny. Throughout history, men, and specifically white men, westernized white men, have had a leg up on getting a job, going to school, not being treated poorly by random people or the police or neighbors, all that stuff. Everything about society, it's been a little bit more in the favor of white men.
Yeah.
The only time that's not been true is the internet. Instagram favors women.
It does, yeah.
Anything that shows an image favors women.
It does.
Hollywood, it favored women.
Yeah.
Music industry, when it shows an image, but like not in the best way.
But it's
right?
like, it's in a weird way because
not in a healthy way.
Not in a healthy way because it's like it's at our expense a lot of the time.
Exactly. It's
at
not
our
in a
expense.
good way that it's favoring you. It is favoring you, but not in the best way.
And I think I've realized that, like, all right, well, if it's gonna be that way, I might as well take advantage of it. And rather than be like embarrassed of it, and that's what I've kind of come around to, or be like, oh, like I shouldn't, I don't deserve this somehow, or whatever. I'm like, no, like if it's gonna help people see my art and me do what I love for a living, then it is what it is. And if people who are gonna follow me for that reason, they'll fall away eventually because like they're not gonna get they're not gonna get a response from me, and so like it'll all kind of work itself out in the end. And there is still a humongous, massive like pay gap from women in the art world. So even though, maybe we're getting more eyes on the internet right now, you look at the numbers and I think I saw an article the other day that was, you can fact check me, but like, I think it's a $9 billion pay gap from like in auction, like paintings.
Oh, wow.
From men to women.
Wow. Okay.
So like, it is not like, because women are getting more views on the internet, like we're getting paid more.
It's just views.
If anything, it's just views. I mean, I have started to get paid from views, which is really nice, but it's not enough to pay the bills. And if someone's going to be like, oh, well, it's also, I think there's a bit of a double standard too, where you can be taken less seriously. You're like, oh, you're just an internet artist, or you're just
an
internet girl, influencer. And
have you gotten that yet?
I've started to get that a little bit, and that is really annoying to me. I mean, I think at a certain point, I probably will work with brands to like leverage, whether it's related to painting, because hey.
I mean, as long as you're doing your work,
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
No.
It's funny because my friends and, some other friends will joke around saying like that I'm an influencer. I was like, I don't have enough followers to be an influencer.
Yeah.
At all.
I mean, I mean, it's weird because like, I guess I do have a lot of followers right now, but I don't even consider myself, I'm like, I don't know who I'm influencing. Like, I don't know.
Right, because an influencer, you almost have to like be promoting these positive
or a
lifestyles all the time. Yeah, man, that's tricky. It's tricky because women will get more views and likes, but they're more like hollow or
it feels that way sometimes.
Yeah, like they're there, but they're not deep there. It's not. It's more superficial, which is like. Do you ever think about how misleading and confusing it is to young girls that see that might like look up to you and be like, oh, how come she has, how many? What are you at now? Do you know, like 110 or something?
Yeah, 111K followers. Yeah,
so 111,000 followers, which is a lot. And younger artists coming up that are female might be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I want that someday. But like, that's not everyone can get that. Because there's artists that have a million, 10 million, 100 million. And not everyone's ever going to get that. So do you ever wonder about like what this effect can be on our society with this race for likes and followers?
It doesn't make
now
you
that you've experienced it.
It doesn't make you happy at the end of the day. It doesn't. Like I thought that like once I got to 100,000 followers, I would like feel different.
That's never how it works.
That's not how it works. I thought I would feel different. I thought like, oh my God, my career will absolutely take off. And like, yes, I've had some cool opportunities that have come my way, but it's still at the end of the day just me in the studio. Like that is the practice. And I am lucky that I have more eyes, but it's all about like what you do with the people who are there.
No.
And it's not, so it really is like I, if anything, felt more comfortable sharing when I had less followers. I felt probably
Sharing.
like just like in general, like things about my life
Oh,
or like
yeah, now you probably
I really
shouldn't.
don't. No, yeah, I really shouldn't. Yeah.
Well, unless it's like your thing, because some people lean into
Yeah.
that and they make it their life. Then they become like the influencer. They actually
Right.
open up. Like
Right.
comedians will do it, musicians will do it.
Yeah.
They embrace it because they might realize like, well, if I want to keep getting followers,
Yeah.
this might help.
It does. I think I want people to feel like they know me in some
Yeah.
sense, like even
Yeah.
if it's more superficial. But like I'm definitely not at this point comfortable like being like super open. I think it's going to take some time, but it did happen very quickly.
It happened
so,
really quickly for you.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, I think I need to ease
It
myself.
was like
into
less than a
this.
year?
Yeah, less than a year. Like a year ago this time, I had 2,000 followers,
Oh
and now
my
I have.
God.
So now I
So
have.
was
like,
it just like every morning you'd wake up and it was
Yeah.
just like another 1,000, another 3, another 5?
Yeah.
Just from these videos,
Just
a
from
couple
these
videos.
couple videos, yeah.
And now when you make videos, do you see like they also help the growth because you have
Yeah.
it starts with such a stronger foundation now?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. And I do have now like some people who are very like invested in my work and who like buy my prints and stuff. So I do have like a serious following of people who also are just they're still relatively newer followers. So I think a lot of people are still getting to know me and getting to know my work. So I haven't seen, I think, the full like potential of what my following is. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's going to take time to get people to really be excited about that. And that's on me to like continue to show up and make good work. Like, just because I got 100,000 followers overnight doesn't mean they're going to stay, that they're going to buy the art,
Right.
anything.
All right.
That's on me to make good work and keep
Yeah.
showing up. So that's what I have to keep reminding myself is like it is just a number. It didn't change anything really.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of it's real, but it's fake. It's like a real mind fuck, honestly.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's certainly confusing. Man. And there are people who experience orders of magnitude more than this. Well, they'll blow up overnight because like a single went viral. And
Right,
they'll
like
get
Billie
millions.
Eilish or whatever. I know
Oh,
she
yeah.
had like
She
her
blew up
one
fast.
song that blew up fast. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not to compare myself to Billie Eilish.
The next Billie Eilish. I mean, have you ever noticed anybody recognize you when you do anything?
No, well, I've
Out there in the
definitely.
world?
I've no one's like come up to me and been like, "Oh, hi," anything like that. But I have had people who have like, seen my work places or been like, "Oh, like I saw this somewhere," or I know I saw somebody who has your print in their house or whatever, things like that. So like, kind of that's starting to happen, but nobody's like recognized me or anything. I'm not that.
That's
not
like
a celebrity yet. Yeah.
That's so interesting
Yeah.
to have that many and still be kind of like anonymous. Yeah.
It's also a lot of I've looked at like my statistics and there's a lot of people from all over the world. So
Right.
I'm actually something I really want is like I do have a strong Chicago following, but like I want it to be even more local than it is.
Right, because stuff around the world, it doesn't do as much for you.
No.
It
Yeah.
doesn't. If you were a touring artist or a comedian, that'd be huge because
Right.
then you can go perform a show in London and you actually have people come to it because they know you.
Right.
But in your situation, it's a little different.
Right.
So you strictly are an artist right now, just making paintings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you do full time.
That's what I do full time. Yep.
So you get a lot of commissions through Instagram?
I do get a lot of commissions through Instagram. I'm kind of at the moment like putting a pause on some commissions because I feel like I've been doing a lot of them lately, and sometimes you get a little burnt out and you're like,
Yeah.
I need to just do my own thing, make sure that like, because the thing is commissions are always based on things I've already done. So sometimes I feel like commissions keep me kind of in the past. And I'm like, I want to like move on to something else or try something new. And it's hard to do that.
Did the Chicago Bulls commission you for anything, or you just made that
I
stuff?
just made that. I made one just because I wanted to. Kirk is really into the Bulls, and we went to a Bulls game, and I was like not paying attention to the game at all. But I was like,
Blasphemy.
I was like, the colors are pretty, So,
You can't say that. You're playing into the cliche.
I know. Yeah, I totally embrace it though. Like I genuinely like. I am horrible with sports, but I really enjoy the aesthetic of like stadiums and stuff. And
Yeah.
so like I'm like, Kirk, just tell me when I should cheer, and then
Like you can't pick up on the social cues of the other 10,000 people
yeah,
cheering.
exactly, yeah, exactly.
Tell me when I should say something.
Something. So no, I'm not a huge sports fan, which is I feel embarrassing because I do paint a lot of stadiums
You
and
do.
sports things now, but I genuinely really love the aesthetic and I like being at games. I just don't like I will never watch a sports game on TV.
Kirk, if you're listening,
Yeah.
I'll go to the games with you.
Yeah, yeah. He just went to the Bulls, or not the Bulls, the Bears game yesterday.
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah.
Nice.
He has friends who will go with him.
Yeah,
but,
you'll just paint it perfectly.
yeah, I'm like take photos for me, So
Where do you start with a painting? Do you have a photograph? Do you do it off your mind? Do you
Yeah.
map it out with lines and kind of go from
So
there?
I feel like paintings kind of start stewing in my brain like almost like months before I actually start painting them. I'll have like an idea. It's very rare that like I just am like, oh, saw that. I'm gonna go paint that like right now. I'm usually thinking like, oh, that'd be cool. And then I'm kind of like collecting like a vibe in my head. Like for example, the Bulls one I did, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if like it was just like a sea of red. And then I was like really into the color red and like thinking about red for like 3 months.
Just red.
I was just thinking about red. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I had photos and I was like looking at other people's photos they'd taken. But ultimately it was my photo that I took. And I just sort of like imagined it though still because it wasn't exactly the photo. So a lot of it's very much like, yes, it looks realistic, but I usually enhance things or I'm like, I want to create a certain vibe. So I will like create like a certain color palette that I know I want to use. And I'm just kind of using the photo as like a base of structure, kind of like, if I was, doing like a architectural like map of something. But the color is always usually just in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was it always like that, or is that a way you developed?
I think
over
I
time?
developed that over time. I've always been very much like color and light focused. Like I'm less interested in having things look like precise and like perfect. I'm more interested in like what the colors like communicate or like what I sound like such a like millennial being like the vibe, but like the vibe like is a really big.
You are a millennial.
Well, yeah, I know I am, but like it's like I'm like the vibe is a really big deal to me, and I really like I love like glowy sort of aesthetic and stuff. So like I'm very interested in just like what light is doing. So
You have a lot of that in your paintings.
you do, yeah,
Very much just glow. Yeah, not like exact perfect lines, but almost like this blend from one structure to like another one. Oh, it's very interesting.
It's kind of like almost. It's not like someone said it's a little whimsical
A
still.
little bit, yeah.
It's kind
but
of still
not
a
like
whimsical.
as far as like a Starry Night whimsical. Like
Right.
that's like brain melted.
Yeah.
And you're not like perfect straight lines like you're in
I'm
a drafting
not
class.
a hyper realist either. Yeah.
It's a nice middle ground.
Yeah. It's like I just want you to like leave with like, oh, this is what this feels like.
It is more like a feel. That's right.
Yeah.
This isn't exact or I have to try to figure out what this means. It's like I feel that this is what it would be like if I were there on a sunny sunset in July,
Right. Maybe just squint a little bit, because it's not so perfect. But yeah, so that's sort of like where I'm at with my work. And I think I'm actually going to probably start going even a little more, not abstract, but like blending it a little bit further, I think. Because
is that like an active decision or you just kind of like feel it? Like, where does that?
I'm feeling that. Also, my wrist has been hurting.
Really?
Because of all the little details. So I'm like, we need to
I
get
never
a
even
little
thought
bit
about
looser.
that.
Yeah.
It's a big problem with musicians, especially like classically trained ones that are just playing 8 hours a day with a bow. It's really hard on your wrist.
It is.
We're not designed to do this stuff.
No, you're not. So I think I'm going to start getting a little bit looser in certain areas just for the longevity of my career.
Are there certain exercises, hand practices you can do to?
Yeah. So I think part of the issue is I was doing a lot of yoga too, which is like, that's all like on your wrist. So no more of that, unfortunately. But yeah, just kind of stretching and icing it whenever I can too.
What are like working out? Like what if like forearm and grip strength workouts?
Yeah, I've been
help?
doing weights. I've been doing weights a little bit.
I just started today. I could do them.
A little bit.
I've been lifting my fists.
My fists, yeah. I am getting married next year, so I do need to work on that with with the dress because I was wearing a strapless dress. So I'm like, all right, yeah, we do need to start lifting a little bit. So, Yeah.
So it's been a weird year then,
It's been a weird year. It's been a really weird year.
but it helped kind of shape your future now. You can be like, I can just be an artist for a bit.
Yeah.
You know? Do you feel like it could leave you at any time? Like you will lose it?
No, I feel way more confident than I
That's
did a
good.
year ago. I think a year ago I felt like, oh my God, this is so like tenuous. This is so like, I better strike while the iron's hot kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm more just like, I'm gonna always be painting. I'm gonna always be making as long as I physically can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really that worried. Like I've proven to myself that people are interested. People like what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, like that's not necessarily going to, it doesn't change how I feel about myself. It doesn't change how I feel about my art. So it's all about like me showing up in the studio and finding like joy in that. Cause it's a very solitary, like weird thing to do all day. Like it's a weird career.
It's weird being alone all day, like
Yeah.
doing what you created.
Yeah.
You know, it's man.
Are you alone all day? Or are you
all
also
the time.
Okay, yeah.
I was
like,
just gonna get like, I'm
Yeah.
trying to find a way to talk. When I talk about myself in this podcast, I try not to talk about myself. I try to make it make sense, so I'm not always talking about myself.
Yeah.
And between what you said about, there's three things that are resonating with you and I at this moment, and what you said about the Art Institute struck a nerve because I have very few people I could talk to about that that actually know what I'm saying and actually agree with that whole world and the money part of it and the pompous part of it and the arrogance. And then the second thing was the internet situation, which you're in a different place now, but you were once in that place where like, what? Why can't
I've been on
figure
both
this
sides
out?
of it, and it's a mind fuck. Yeah.
And it's stressful when you are your own promotional person and social media manager. You do it yourself. It's stressful and it's weird and it's confusing. And then the second thing is like being your own boss, working alone all the time and doing many different things on your own. It's hard to relate to other people because people will work from home, but they're doing someone else's job.
Right.
They work for a company that someone else created.
There's a lot less of this. The stakes are far less.
Way less. They're just like, I don't know, I got this meeting, I'm not going to pay attention or this and that. Now, I have a job at Illinois State University, but it's very open and I have a lot of say and control over my classes. It's at a college level, so I have more freedom there. And that's twice a week, you know. Right. And I'm not tenure track, so I don't have to do a lot of the academic research. I don't have to do a lot of like hiring process. I just teach classes. Right. So that's only, that's only part of the week. The other 5 days a week and then the summers and the winter breaks, I'm doing everything myself. And like today I was working all day alone, many different jobs, but all under the DZ Records umbrella. And it's hard to relate to people. Yeah. It gets weird because I don't know anybody else at the moment that strictly like works for themselves and they decide everything and they have to create their schedule, follow it, try to project what they should be at for the future when there's nothing compared to. I'm not doing like quarterly, how much did I make this quarter? And I don't know, the investors are going to be upset on this, the stocks aren't doing well.
Sometimes I'm like, am I allowed to be doing this? Yeah. Is this illegal? Like, am I allowed to just be at home? Yeah, like, it feels making weird art? Like, is this a real job? Yeah, no, I definitely.
It's very strange. And I've been doing that, give or take, for 7 years now. And at first, I felt very strange. I had a huge imposter syndrome. I don't have it anymore because I've proven to myself and enough people tell you that, like, you're doing it and you're doing it right and they respect it. You're like, okay, it's real. Yeah. This is really happening. But then sometimes I just feel bad. I'll, like, be grocery shopping with all the old ladies because everyone else is at work, you know, on like a Wednesday. You know what it feels like now. On like a Wednesday at 10, which is the best time to go shopping for those who don't get to experience it. And parking's less. There's not as many cars on the road. The stores are more empty. Yep. The employees are nicer because they're dealing with old people and everyone's chill.
You can go to the DMV like not after work, or whatever. It's like
and then you start to feel bad when you see when it is the time of day that everyone else is doing that, right? And you get to like not do it. I start to feel bad. I'm like, man, that sucks. That like do their car wash, laundry, DMV, shopping, all at this awful time to do it, right? And.
I will say that like I have been trying to keep like a normal schedule of like a 9 to 5 just from like I do want to, like, Kirk works a 9 to 5, and I do want to, like, see him after work and not be like, I'm working now. Because we
Yeah.
were kind of doing that for a while where, I'd work a 9 to 5 and then I'd come home and I would be then painting. And it's like, I'll see you on the weekends, even though we, like, lived together.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, all right, I'll try to, like, keep to that schedule. So,
It's
like,
healthy.
so it's a little healthier. It's like I can see people, but, it really is still, like, even then, it's a 24/7 job because in my head, it's like, oh, I'm posting this. I'm getting an email from
You can't
somebody.
get away from it.
You really can't get away from it. There's nobody else replying to my emails. Any opportunity I don't take it's all on me.
Right.
That's money I'm not making. And, also making those decisions about, like, should I take this opportunity? Should I not take this opportunity? Well, the only one who's going to feel those consequences are me.
Or when people back out.
Or when people back out.
It
Yeah.
happens. You have a big gig. I've had it. I have one in 2 weeks that dropped out, and it's like a really big one. And it's like one that happens when you work for a company and like something drops out. It doesn't. You still get your salary. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Maybe if it's commission based stuff, you might not get much. But most people are salary and like, well, guess okay. When it happens to me, it's like, well, guess I'm not going on that vacation I wanted to do.
Right.
Guess I'm not gonna. Next month's gonna be tight, like stuff like that.
Yeah, and those are the thoughts you have. It's not. Yeah, it's like next month's gonna be tight, and like it's the same thing. I'll have commissions that I think are set and ready to go. We've discussed whatever, and then they're like, "Oh, I want to wait a couple more months on this." I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I banked on that. Like I bought that
you can't
purse.
bank on anything. I've been learning to not put any eggs in any baskets. When someone books, I go cool, and I won't feel happy until they left the studio after we did the product and they paid me. Otherwise, until that happens, anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Things happen. You can't count on
I think COVID taught us that. Probably,
oh my God, it did.
Yeah.
COVID was brutal.
I'm sure for you because you couldn't have people in person.
Yeah. I mean, I had to skip a year. 19, 21.
Yeah.
I had to skip a year of that. I couldn't have any bands come in. I couldn't do anything I wanted to. I couldn't even grow in teaching because teaching sound stuff through Zoom was miserable.
I was going to say.
It was bad for me, it was bad for the students, and it was bad for the program, it was bad for everybody.
Yeah.
And I couldn't grow as like an educator.
Yeah.
Which was, it kind of sucks when you're like, especially as my third year, it was kind of new. It was the end of my second year, and I was still new. I'm trying to like learn how to do this. It's a whole nother skill set to teach at a college level. So that sucked. But I kept telling myself, like, everyone's going through this. Some people are dying. I'm fortunate enough to have some roommates, people to hang out with, in this time. I had a lot of space. You've been to my house. There's a big yard. So I had a lot of space to have privacy and safety, which not everyone did. I can imagine being cooped up in an apartment.
Yeah, that's tough.
I wasn't, and I don't want to know what that's like. That sounds awful.
Yeah. Although I'm kind of cooped up in an apartment all day, every day. Anyway, like by choice, so I really can't.
Oh, man. Yeah, but I mean, so you work from home?
I do work from home. Yeah, our second bedroom is the studio.
It's a studio.
So it's a little tight, but I'm making it work. And at the moment, like, I can't imagine like going someplace else to work. Like, I like working from
so
my
much time.
home. Yeah.
That working from home, you get all that time because the commute, this, that, again, running errands is great. You can double down. You can do laundry, dishes. In my situation, upload videos to YouTube, render videos on Final Cut while you're doing you could
all
just layer. Because people have asked me, like, how do you juggle 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different careers at once? And it's like, I just have learned how to layer stuff.
Yeah.
You have the computers and machines work for you while you do other stuff.
Right.
While you're, I've said it many times too, there's times when you're just like, at home lollygagging doing stuff, and that's the time that I'll use to promote social media. Like I just find better ways to fit it all.
Use your time,
And you get better and better, and it is a skill. It takes years to like hone in and that discipline. Now my discipline is don't do any production or editing work or only do it between 10 and 5.
Okay.
10 a.m. and 5. So that's 7-hour windows for like editing, mixing, mastering, video work, sessions with bands, anything like that. Between 7 and 8 a.m. is strictly like reading and meditating, and that's all I do. 8 to 9:30, I go on 5-mile walks.
Nice.
Then I do a little workout, make a smoothie, and then it works all day. And then by 5, when everyone, like you said, you want to have a normal life, when people start coming home from work, that's when I'll make dinner. And try not to do work in the evening. Sometimes things like, this isn't this is work for people. This is not really work.
Right.
But it is, but it's not.
Yeah.
I'm like hanging out and talking. I would be doing this anyway with somebody else, but just not in front of a mic. So I'll do some of this stuff in the evenings, but I also do enjoy doing these in the mornings, like in the afternoons. But yeah, you just get really good at layering, you know, like, okay, I'll take a break from painting in your situation.
Yeah.
I'll go do the laundry. And while the laundry's going, I guess I'll go on my phone and like try to book some things.
Right.
While I'm booking things, maybe I'm out on a walk getting some fresh air at the park, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because if you have a good smartphone, which they all are now, and a laptop, my God.
You can get
what you
so
can
much
do,
accomplished. Yeah.
It's insane how much. I tell people, like, my phone, it's bittersweet because it's always attached to me and you too, and you can work from it all day. You never know when you aren't working.
Right.
It's so dangerous.
It is really dangerous.
Even in the evenings, we're like, oh, I'm not working. Maybe you're not in your studio anymore, but you still have that thing with you.
Still right there.
And you can work from it really, really efficiently. Like 10 o'clock at night. So around 7, I tend to put the no notifications on. I just flip it down. I try not to look at it for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then at 10, look at it one last time and then try to go to bed.
You're way better. You're much better than me.
But this is, again, years of doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I even have 6 years of age on you.
Yeah.
So I've learned it because it gets dangerous. It gets so dangerous because the best time to email artists who are up late and traveling and touring and stuff is the evening.
Yeah.
Because they're all on their phone. So it's the best time to Instagram message. It's the best time to try to collaborate, to reach out to text, to respond. That's when everyone's doing it in the world I'm in.
Right.
So it's so hard to like not do it, but you just, I don't know. I just like, I'll respond tomorrow. And with weekends, I've gotten really serious about like, I try not to respond to anything until Monday morning.
Yeah.
If I get an email on Saturday, it's hard. You always feel like that, like survival mentality where you're going to like miss out on a gig or work.
Right.
But most people aren't doing stuff on Saturdays and Sundays anyway. So like just wait and they'll be there on Monday.
And I think a lot of people appreciate it too more than you think. I mean, I'm like, would I really want to be receiving an email like at 10 p.m. right now? Like
on a Saturday
night?
On
a Saturday night? Like, no.
No, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
Because then they're in the same place as you. They go, oh, do I have to respond? I'm out with my friends at a bar. Do I really have to respond to this right now?
Yeah. So I think it's a good way to operate. And I'm still figuring out my schedule very much. I think it's really hard because like with painting, there's a lot of like, okay, I'm not in the mood today sometimes where it's like, oh, like I'm not feeling inspired or this painting is like kicking my butt and I'm just like, it's like a real slog right now.
Yeah.
And getting myself to like get into the studio and do that certain days, I'm like, I've had to learn like some days are just, I'm just not supposed to paint. And like sometimes I have to pivot my schedule and be like, I'm just not in the mood today and I'm going to end up doing more harm than good to this painting.
Yeah.
And I have
and it's hard. You can't undo a lot of that. Or you can. It's probably really hard
but
though,
it's
right?
hard and there's like, you end up sometimes making more work for yourself. So I've had to figure out like, okay, knowing like when I'm really like, okay, I'm not in a place right now or like just it's not happening today, you know?
Yeah.
And then having like, okay, I'm going to pivot my schedule. I've tried to have like really rigid for like, you know, sort of like structured time like that. And it doesn't really work for me because there is sort of like a little bit of a woo-woo thing going on too with me and the painting where it's like, all right, sometimes it's just like it needs to breathe. I need a break, do a new thing.
What's a new thing you'll do? Since you're strictly painting, what are some other things you can do for your job?
Yeah, I think social media is like one. I mean, there's always like...
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's always something to be doing. There's always a message to respond to.
How much time do you take a day with it?
I don't even want to know. I'm sure I could look right now.
I can guess on my own. I could tell. I mean, again, this is our lives. Like we have to, this is part of the job.
Probably is like 4 hours a day if I had to get of just like screen time on the app. And that's not all being productive. That's some scrolling probably, you know.
I always tell people I'm doing research.
That's what I say too. It's research. It's research. And sometimes it really is.
It is sometimes,
or it's
but
like
sometimes we lie to
engaging
ourselves.
with other people's content so that, you know, that they engage with my content, whatever. It's like, it's so hard. It's so fuzzy, you know, that. But sometimes I'll do social media. I'll edit videos as well. So sometimes like the editing of videos. Yeah. I did have the podcast for a bit. We haven't been doing the podcast lately just because I've been kind of busy and wanting to just like focus my time. And also
And that's called
Gesso Girls.
And that's done with you and a friend?
Yeah, my friend Erin Murray.
She's a good artist too. I was looking at her
Yeah,
work.
she's a good artist. She is no longer doing it though because she's too busy, and I think it just is kind of pivoting more towards. She's not really doing painting per se. She's more like graphic design and stuff. So I think I'm just gonna maybe at some point like do a solo podcast or more like an interview based podcast like this.
Gesso Girls, you said?
Gesso Girls is the name of
Why called that?
Gesso is the primer that you use for painting, and we just thought it sounded catchy.
It does. I just didn't know what gesso meant.
And most people, it's kind of like an
works.
inside joke. Like if you know what gesso is, it's like the primer that you use on canvases. So, yeah, I don't think it's gonna stay that name since it's no longer Gesso Girls. It's just gonna be me. So I need to find a new name. I could just have it be Gesso Girl, but I think I'll pick a new name for it. And I think I'm gonna.
Gesso Girl's a good name.
It is a good name. Maybe I'll keep. I don't know.
Keep it. You already have it
Keep it.
established.
I do have
right?
it established. Yeah.
Just keep it going.
Just keep it going.
Yeah.
I think next year. I just know this next year is gonna be insane. Just from like art standpoint, I'm getting married next year, and I'm like,
when?
next September.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. And
So young. How's it feel?
weird. I didn't expect this, honestly. No, we're both. Kirk is 34, so he's
Okay.
older than me. So there was a little bit of that, a part of it, but at the same time, like I'm like I know you're my person, so like I don't.
Yeah. When you know, you know.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
all right,
Well, that's cool.
yeah, we could arbitrarily wait till I'm 30 just to say I, was 30,
Yeah,
but
who cares?
whatever.
If you know, just do it.
Just doing it. So I just know there's going to be like,
That's busy.
Busy.
Marriages are.
yeah. And so I'm like, I'm not going to start the podcast up again. So probably like another year from now, I'll start doing the podcast more
Cool.
seriously.
Do it. They're fun.
They're fun. I love it.
You learn so much just
and
talking to
it
people.
also like kind of scratches the itch of like the sound stuff that I still like doing.
Yeah.
My apartment has horrible acoustics though, so like
If
that.
you need any advice on acoustic treatment,
Yeah,
I mean, this
I live
basement
near a
you would-
train, so
well, there's some stuff you can do.
is there? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like I'll show you later. I've done some magic down here. You would
Okay.
never. This basement did not look like this when I moved in.
Yeah,
here.
I'm sure.
And I'm actually building stuff to go around this.
Okay.
When I have bands come in to do sessions, I have all these soundproof curtains
Okay.
that I cover all this in, and it helps tremendously. There's a lot you can do if you just
Okay.
have some foam, soundproof curtains, some absorption padding,
Okay.
some stuff really inexpensive. You can even be really crafty, and if you're gonna do it to cover up stuff
Yeah.
and then put things on it, you can honestly a good time. It's gonna sound ridiculous, and some people have their own thoughts about it, but like. Go out on a garbage night, like maybe where your family lives on the north side, not
Yeah.
in the city, in the winter, and find couches and just take out the cushions within them.
Oh my God.
Why the winter? Because bugs can't live in them.
Bugs can't live in them.
Yeah,
Smart.
nothing can live in them. So do it on the cold days. It sounds terrible, but it's the same foam that this stuff is. It just doesn't look all sleek.
Right.
But it's stuff you hide. If it's going to be like blocking a window and hidden behind this, like behind that acoustic wall is a window shoved with couch cushions in it. And you would never know, and you can't even hear beyond it.
Oh my God.
But so why spend a fortune on thick 8-inch foam when you can just use couch cushions?
There's couch cushions.
But
yeah.
again, do it in the winter on
in
a
the
garbage
winter.
night. Just find a
Okay.
couch that's out there and just go through the utility knife and cut it out and take it.
That's perfect. Whenever we move,
It's cheap.
because we're gonna move next year, and I'm like, wherever we move to next, I'm like, we can't be near the train.
Yeah.
we can't be near the train.
I'm so glad I don't hear any of that
The
stuff.
train is like I'm just so used to it now, but I always notice it like during like for the podcast. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
Which line? Red?
A blue line.
Blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just always there. But
It's that close? You live that close to it?
it's funny because it's like it's not even that close, but there's like a vacant parking lot, and then there's like Milwaukee, and it's like it just travels across.
It just goes right across it. Yeah.
And so it's like
Nothing's stopping it.
It feels like nothing's stopping it. So it feels like we're like next to it, even
Yeah.
though it's not. We're quite a distance.
Some
so.
soundproof curtains just over
Okay.
the windows
Okay.
with a little bit of absorption in the room
Nice.
helps a lot. Because what happens, the sound's hitting the window,
Okay.
emanating through it, and it's bouncing around a reflective surface. So if
Okay.
you block the first hit with a curtain and you put a
Okay.
gap between the window and the curtain, maybe 2 layers of it, and then you put treatment in the room, whatever sound can get through the glass, hit that air gap, get through the curtains, and then still bounce around the room. Don't bounce around anymore because it's getting absorbed by the cushions.
Okay.
So that actually helps a lot. You'd be amazed.
May just do, honestly just for my own sanity, like just for like at night and stuff, because
Yeah,
sometimes like
even for sleeping and
sleeping
hanging
and
out,
stuff,
watching
yeah.
a movie, having a dinner party, you name it.
yeah.
I would recommend it. It's
Okay. You've convinced me. Maybe I'll start the podcast sooner because of my
Yeah, and if you
I'll
need
get
help,
more.
yeah, I'm happy to help and give
Perfect.
advice. I even help you like build and set up this stuff.
That'd be
It's
awesome.
not a big deal.
So because I definitely want to do it, and I enjoy like talking about like this stuff, and I enjoy talking about because I think podcasts were a huge thing for me like when I was just starting out because I felt really alone. I was alone in the studio and I was like, is this even possible? So I felt like I was listening to like so many like probably cringy or like corny like motivational like podcast things at the time just to try to like stay
Just
motivated.
having another human being talking.
Yeah, talking.
Hey, like you're there. I listen to more podcasts now than ever being alone all the time.
Yes.
I listen to a lot of music, but I listen to music in certain situations.
Right.
I drive 130 miles to teach at ISU every Tuesday and Thursday, so that's 520 miles a week.
Holy shit.
That's all podcasts because I do music all day. I go to class, I'm talking about music, editing music. I edit music down here all day, so I don't want to listen to music. I want to listen to a podcast and learn something and maybe learn something I didn't know, history, science, math, technology, art, social media, something.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. It's gotten me through the last 7 years of my life of being on my own,
Yeah, I agree. I think podcasts are like, that's kind of why I want to make one is because it's something that like I consume. And I think that is like, it's similar with like painting. It's like, I enjoy painting. It's like, I consume that content. So if you're already consuming that content, you're probably going to be really good at making it because you've had hours and hours of listening to and like practicing it. So like if you can find something that you're like already interested in, already doing a medium, you're already just kind of has a baseline curiosity about, like that's the one I think you can really dive deeper into and it's not going to be like hard for you to do.
And you'd have a bunch of guests to talk to, a lot of artists now,
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
So that's like, that's coming down the pipeline. But I've had some practice with it already, but it's not,
What kind of gear were you using?
not really good stuff.
That's another thing. If you need advice, well, first of all, get these mics.
Okay, well, yeah.
There's a lot of different gear, but if you get these mics, these stands, a cloud lift, some cables, and a little 2-channel interface, it would probably run you all brand new. I would recommend buying this stuff used.
Okay.
Audio gear, buy used because it's meant to be used.
Right.
Like if I were to sell this right now, you'd sell it for half the price, but it's the same thing.
It's
if
the
you bought
same
it new.
thing, yeah.
So if you buy it all used, you could probably get it everything for like $600.
Okay.
And it's like high quality.
High quality stuff.
Do you have Logic Pro X?
I don't, no.
What software would you edit with?
I was using,
Do you have an Apple computer?
I do have an Apple computer. What am I using? It's like, not Avid, no, it's.
Adobe?
No, geez, what is it?
FL Studio?
This is so
Pro
bad.
Tools, Fruity Loops, GarageBand, Ableton, Studio One. I think I named all of them.
Okay, this is like a really like.
Is it like
weird,
a weird one-off one? That's
I think
not
a weird
popular?
one that I like downloaded like a long time in art school.
Okay.
Someone told me to, and I'm like trying to remember what it's called.
I just
now.
named a bunch.
Yeah.
Well, you have an Apple computer.
Okay.
You can get the student bundle.
Okay.
You're not a student, you just say you are.
Okay.
And it's $200 for Logic Pro X and Final Cut because you do audio,
Okay.
high-end audio and video in both, and they connect and communicate, so you can kind of go between them.
Okay.
It's what I'm using right now, but it's super easy to use and intuitive, and it's high quality.
Okay.
So yeah, with that software, the mics, the stands, some cables, a cloud lift brings these levels louder.
Okay.
Because these are low output microphones, and
Okay.
then into a little interface that's a 2-channel, like a Focusrite 2-channel USB interface. All used, probably $600 for everything.
Okay.
And it's like, you'll sound amazing.
Yeah.
High quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's some settings you should put on, like equalization, compression, a limiter on each channel.
Okay.
And that's simple, and then you're good.
Wow.
Like the editing is very simple after that.
That's really nice. Yeah, I have such a sketchy lo-fi situation at the moment. It's just very
Sketchy lo-fi.
very sketchy.
That's so cool, though, sketchy lo-fi.
Yeah.
And then you don't even have to do a camera. I decided to buy a nice camcorder and do that because I realized the one thing I did do right was podcasts are big with audio, but they're also big with video.
Yeah.
And you can make clips and
Yes.
this and that. So I was like, you got to do both. And I'm glad I did both because I have more views on the YouTube channel with it than I do on the streaming.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do like to watch,
They do.
which is really interesting.
Yeah, I never would have thought, but they do.
I know, because I normally am like, I'm painting, so I don't want to watch because I'm like, I just need it. I'm already looking at something else. So
It's like TV now, though, because
It is,
YouTube is on
yeah.
every smart TV, so you could just put it on and do
Right.
something. But like, if you ever want to take a break, you can go back and look at it and watch it. And
It's so
if you end up
interesting,
having an interesting guest or maybe someone with a little bit more fame, then people really want to watch
really
it.
want to watch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. What kind of guests have you had on the show?
All kinds, a lot of different types of artists, producers, actors, writers, a lot of musicians, comedians. I've had a couple.
Am I the first visual artist you've had on?
I'm trying to think. I think so. You're maybe I'm trying to think. I've had a glass blower. I'm trying to think of visual art. I've had people who are visual artists, but that's not like their main thing. Like I had my friend Brennan Weaver, who's a comedian. He made that backdrop and another piece upstairs. Great artist. But so he makes art, but he's a comedian. He does other work for a living.
Okay.
Art was just something he did on the side. So stuff like that. You're the first person that's like, what you do is you're a visual artist.
Yeah.
I think you're the only one.
Okay.
But also turns out there's not that many of you on this planet.
That's another thing that like I wanted to say that like so many people are like, oh my God, it's so hard to make it as like a visual artist. I'm like, there aren't as many of us as you think. Like it's not as competitive. I mean, it is competitive. Like don't get me wrong, but like I think that people really overplay like how saturated the market is.
Yeah,
I think people.
Instagram does that to you though. It makes you feel like, but like 99.9% of people on Instagram, that's not what they're doing for a living.
No.
It's a hobby. It's fun. It's a passion project. They go and do it on the weekends. Like it's not actually what their income is.
Right.
So you can't take that into that variable.
Right.
You know.
I think it's a far fewer, smaller. It's a lot smaller of a group. Even just like the Chicago other painters I know, it's like it's not really that big of a community at all, really.
No.
I mean, it is and it isn't. But
it's like a lot of careers though, where it's like
yeah,
it's like this, and then it just like skyrockets,
right?
Because
So
there are people who make millions off painting.
You just kind of have to get through a hump, and then there's a lot of like don't shoot for it to be the $1 million painting person. Just try to be the couple $1,000 a pop painting, and the more you do, the prices will go up, but you can still make a really good living.
Absolutely.
Like just from doing, kind of middle of the road price point paintings. And yeah. And I think that there's too much like black and white thinking when it comes to painting. It's like the starving artist or you're selling for millions at auction. And it's like, no.
Yeah. If you can have like a roommate and pay your bills and pay rent and have food and enjoy some life, then live like that. Like
that's kind of what I do. Yeah. I'm like, my goal is like, I don't really want to be like, the $1 million painting person. Like that's a lot of pressure.
It's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. I don't really care about being like a gallery artist. I kind of actually like having it be through the internet and like real people buying my work. I don't really like the white wall gallery thing that much. I think I'm a little bit from art school burnt out from it, but I think I'll get back there eventually. Just went to I went to like an art, I've been going to more like shows from other artists lately just because like now I like know them and I'm like, oh, I should go. And I'm like a little triggered. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's a gallery.
I need to go to more. I'm going to one on Friday. My partner's father is an artist.
Okay.
So I'm going to one in River North. He's a pretty decently known Chicago artist. Yeah.
Nice. What's his name? You can say.
I'll tell you offline.
Okay. Offline.
I try to keep that stuff a little more private.
Okay.
Because, as you know, people are weird out there.
People already know Kirk's name, and Kirk's not on social media at all, so you can't even find him. So.
I've had many people be like, why isn't that like more public? Why don't you post that stuff? It's like, because I already have enough problems trying to keep odd characters from knowing too much about me. I opened my life to the world.
Yeah.
Like people hung out, thousands of people knew where I lived, came to my house.
Yes.
If I wasn't a man, and specifically a man who can handle himself visually, physically, then I'd be so scared.
Yeah.
Because the stuff I've seen and dealt with is not good.
Really?
But I'm just not scared because it's like, I hope nobody would want to mess with me because they'd regret it. So that's why I'm not scared. I have confidence in my ability physically to defend myself. But if I was a smaller woman, I'd be terrified of what I've seen and dealt with. A lot of people, because my address and number and name, everything has been public. It's all on Google.
Wow.
It's public information. It's a public business. Anyone could see everything.
What's the craziest thing? Are you allowed to say that's happened? Or
I mean, It's not good, but honestly, it's like it's what the crime rates and what police have always said. Like crime is the worst stuff. It's usually among people you know. It's actually not random people.
Wow. So
it's
has someone like stolen stuff from you? Yeah.
it's people you know. It's old
Wow.
friends. It's people that were close to you. It's usually not random people. It's not where
Yeah.
crime happens.
Yeah.
Violence isn't normally people walking down the street. It's domestic violence.
It is,
That's
yeah.
Just it's the stats of it.
Right.
You know, so I would recommend for anybody who has a more public life or people know a lot about them.
Yeah.
Keep your personal life, like keep that stuff separate.
Separate, yeah.
It's healthier.
Yeah.
And it's healthier to just separate them and like be like, okay, I'm done with that. I'm gonna hang out with you and focus on that.
Right.
This is our relationship. That's life. That's work.
Right.
You know, they're different. And it's different because, you know, he's a guy, he's older. It's not as threatening or scary to him, you know, your partner. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Oh yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I am nervous about, like, at the moment, I think I need to get a P.O. box because, like, currently my return address when I send out, like, paintings is my address.
Oh, yeah, you should do it.
Which I need to
Definitely
do.
Get rid of that.
Yeah.
You have too many people can find that.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, I mean, this place, this new spot, the
Mm-hmm.
address is not public. I'm not telling anyone. I only tell you if you are, like, confirming that you're coming here. And then
yeah.
I will be like, all right, this is the address.
Yeah.
On that, I used to just, my address was on every email. I threw it out there. It was on Google. You can Google the old place. You Google literally the DZ and my address and home pop up like on Google.
Wow.
So like anybody could have found it and knew about it.
Wow.
But I had like 5 guy roommates and
Okay.
a big dog, and we were all pretty capable dudes, so I wasn't
Right.
really scared. You know, I sleep with a nail gun under my bed.
Here you go.
You know,
It's comforting.
I know. I always say that, and people are like, "What?" I'm like, "What?" I mean,
You don't know?
imagine you break into a house and someone is shooting a nail gun at you. You're probably running out of there.
That house. It's honestly more terrifying than like a real gun to me somehow.
Right, because you're like, that person's so crazy. They're shooting a nail gun at you right
yeah.
now. They're probably not messing around.
They are not messing around.
And you don't need a permit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, the public thing, but I mean, it's what we sign up for.
Right,
you
right.
know? I've asked for it. I've asked for everyone to come in my home, so now what do I expect?
Right. And you do have to, like, that's something I've also recognized, like, kind of going back to, like, the whole, like, yeah, people seeing my face and stuff with, like, the painting. It's like, I didn't realize how many people were going to, like, actually, like, see me, right? But it's like, all right, well, I can't go back from that now, you know? So, like, it is what it is. And I know there are a lot of artists out there, you know, who don't ever, like, show their face, like, just show the art.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that.
I've been tempted to do that, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I think it's important that people see like a woman succeeding in art.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You deal with an interesting internal battle with that.
Yeah.
You know, being a young woman who is succeeding in that, having success, you want to be like a good influence to show the other women, the other kids. Not just that, this is something I don't think it's talked about enough when one sex does well. Mm-hmm. You also are helping young boys to realize, like, oh, women can do this too.
Yes.
Maybe not older men who are too stupid at
stuck
this
in
point.
Their ways, yeah.
But
like
7-year-old little Timmy might see them like, oh, wow, like he can see like women can have a job and be respected and do well and excel in something that I thought was for men.
Yeah.
And so it's healthy for both sides.
Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, I'm trying to remember, like, from art history. I mean, I think at SAIC, like, they made more of an effort to include, like, women and, like, when they were talking about painting and, like, art history from a painting perspective. But I distinctly remember, like, in high school taking art history, and I swear to God, like, 2 women were mentioned. Like, and some of those textbooks, like, they have, like, no women in the textbooks. So, like, I think the more that we can just have, like, even just, like, the visual even of, like, a woman showing her art, like, I think that that's really important. I also think it's interesting, too, because since my Instagram has, like, taken off a bit, I have a predominantly male following, and which was weird. It used to be more women than men. And I have had a weird, like, I was like, oh, what is that about? I am painting things like cityscapes, which I think, not to be stereotypical, like, can appeal more to, like, a male audience sometimes.
Architecture
stuff. Things. So I think it's a
sports
bit.
Stadiums.
There's sports stadium stuff too. So, like, I do think there's kind of a weird contrast of, like, you know, like I said, I'm not exactly like a sporty girl. Like, I'm a little more girly in general. Yeah, when do I clap? But, like, so I'm kind of like this weird, like, and also my colors are sometimes a little more feminine, like pink or like bright colors and stuff. So I've kind of been thinking a lot about this lately. Is I'm kind of intentionally like doing these sort of like masculine, stereotypically masculine subject matters, but I'm like a woman doing them, and I'm doing them in my own style. And I kind of want to embrace that more and like have that be more of like something that I like stand behind and am proud of and doing intentionally, and not like being like, oh, I should make my face less seen because I only, you know what I mean? It's like I want to kind of have the two juxtaposing things.
That's so tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky because like you're trying to figure out the numbers. You're looking at the analytics, but there's some, method to that madness. Like it could be that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on when it's kind of, this is a hot take, when it's kind of apparent, a little obvious that a woman's using her body coupled with the art to try to get more?
I don't have a problem with it, honestly, at all. I mean, I just, as long as she's doing it from a place of like, not feeling like she has to in order to get,
okay.
Like I don't want her to think, I don't want anyone to ever think that they have to do that, but I have no problem with it at all. I mean, I think it's totally someone's choice. It's not something I want to do just because that's just not me or like how I usually present myself. It's just not who I am. So I'm never going to do something that's not genuine to who I am. But if somebody is like really is embracing their body and like wanting to do that and already maybe does that in some capacity, then absolutely. Yeah. As long as it's genuine to them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky, that one, because you hope that it doesn't give a bad image or rep to like everyone making art, like
I would hope that someone could, just like there are men who dress differently, and there are men who present themselves differently in the world. I would hope that people can be, smart enough to differentiate that women can also present differently in the world. Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily speak to every single woman or how they're supposed to show their art or show up, So I think we don't think about like how men are showing their art and what they're wearing. So like, why are we thinking about it? And I think I just wish the conversation, like I get that it's there. It's always going to be there. But I wish it just was something that people could, separate from the art. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I always like to ask women because it's like, I only know so much. I'm a guy. So I'd like to hear what other women.
Is this a thing for like musicians as well? You'd say?
It's a thing in all backgrounds, all media. I have noticed a lot of women, musicians, art, music, it starts to feel kind of obvious what's going on. You could see, you might even notice like they're one way one day, and then all of a sudden they start to show a lot more skin, and you start to see their numbers go up. And I'm like, huh. I at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with it. I just hope it doesn't turn into something like worse, like it does more harm than good or something.
Right.
For everybody. Like I don't really care. At the end of the day, I don't have time to care. It's not my body or my problem or my life. That's them. So it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, you just wonder what their DMs look like. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, I don't even want to know what those DMs
I mean, I
look
get like crazy DMs. I can show you some of them off mic, but I've gotten crazy DMs, and I'm like, and I'm wearing like a sweater, I don't know. But I don't think any of that's my responsibility or any of the woman's responsibility. So as long as it's coming from a place of like, that's how she wants to present herself, that's how she feels confident or good, and that's a representation of herself, then I'm fine with it. And I don't think the creepy DMs are any woman's fault. Yeah. Responsibility, obviously. And I'm not saying you do think that either, but I think it's, there are filters you can put on your DM so you just don't even see it, and if you do get more eyes on your work, I will say it is something that, unfortunately, like when people see a certain number next to your name, it like on Instagram or social media, people can take you a little more seriously too. So if that's something that they're trying to do, I don't know, it is a tricky thing.
It's so tricky.
It's so tricky.
And it's so new. That's why we don't even have answers.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. It's like I can't even get a good answer. I can't even find a way to properly formulate it without it sounding bad. Sometimes it comes out wrong. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do or control it. I think I just get concerned about like humanity in the future. Like, what is it if everyone's just posting stuff
just to get attention
with like themselves in like very little clothes? Like, what if this just becomes a thing and it's is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it better for humanity? Is it better for women? Is it hurting them and the cause? Like, of feminism, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I tend to ask women because they would give me a better answer than I could come up with, obviously, but I'm just curious. I have no idea. I just see it, so I have to talk about it. I see it. I can't undo what I've been seeing the last decade, but
I think it just all comes back to like an intention and like, you know, this is the problem is like social media is like it is still a visual platform for largely. It's becoming more like music based, I would say now, which is exciting for musicians. But it's still very much like a visual medium. And so something I even realize is that like what's eye-catching is what gets people's attention. And, you know, whether it's like the art you're making is eye-catching, whether it's like vibrant or different or whatever, that is usually the stuff that sticks. And sometimes people use other things that are eye-catching, you know? And it's all about like whose eye do you want to catch? And I think that that's sort of what you have to remind yourself, or that's what I remind myself. It's like, okay, I want people to look at the art, and if they look at me instead, that's their problem. So that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man, it's definitely murky water. There's no right or wrong answer. There's people's thoughts and opinions. At the end of the day, I want people to do what they love. I'm glad that these things exist, that we can expose more and see more cool art out there.
I think this is the best time to be a visual artist, or honestly any kind of artist. I think we are really, people talk about how hard it is all the time, but I like to be the counter narrative of like, yes, it is hard, but I mean, this wouldn't even be remotely possible for me to be doing like 20 years ago.
Couldn't agree more. It's hard, but guess what? It's always been hard.
Yeah.
Now it's really hard, but you have a possibility.
All these tools.
You have a possibility. You have a tool. You can get yourself out there. Before it was just hard and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Especially as a woman doing visual art 50, 60, 100 years ago. It's like,
absolutely not.
What are you doing? Like,
absolutely not.
If you even could, if you can even get yourself out there and be taken
let alone
seriously
being a woman who's doing like something like cityscapes. It's like all you used to be able to do was like painting domestic things.
Yeah,
you know, like
some flowers or
Mary
something.
Cassatt was like, I would do mostly like still lifes or like women or children. Like you weren't even allowed to paint like men really back then because that was like not polite. So, or like, and God forbid, like nudes, like, oh my God. So like, you know, that there's just a whole, I don't know. I just think more people should talk about how amazing and the opportunities are than it is like, oh my God, it's so hard. Because like you said, any job is hard. I could have been doing pre-med. I could still be in school.
You would still be in school.
I would still be in school now.
You'd be starting your fellowship or your residency.
Probably, yeah.
You'd be starting a residency.
Probably hating my life. So
that's so
I'm really happy
funny.
I'm not hating my life. I'm happy I'm here instead.
Working like a residency, working 20 hours a day for like the next 3 years.
I would so much rather be doing this and working hard at it than doing that. So just wherever you put your time and energy.
Is your studio just covered in canvases and paint?
Yeah, my landlord's not going to be happy when I move out. Let's just put it that way.
Why?
Because there's paint on the walls.
You just paint it?
I'll paint over it.
Paint it white?
Yeah, paint it white will be fine. But
it's so funny.
I do try to like cover things, but sometimes, you know, it doesn't work. But it's pretty much a mess. I try to keep it, it's a small space, so you kind of have to like utilize it as well as you can. But yeah.
So do you mostly do oil paintings?
Acrylic.
Have you? I'm assuming you've done oils.
I've done oil. Yeah, that one is
one's
oil.
oil.
Yeah,
I love that.
I did oil, but it started to like really like give me headaches because of the fumes. And I didn't have like a really great ventilation.
Yeah, you kind of need a whole system for that
area. And I was like, long term, I think it's probably better if I don't do oil. And I like acrylic because it dries a lot faster. And I'm not patient. So oil is something that you have to have a lot of patience with.
Why is oil like? It's like the epitome of like fine art painting. Like, oh, I do oil. Why is that?
I think I don't know. I think that's changing.
right? It used to be like that.
I think mainly because the quality was better. They've really, really improved. Like acrylic is a newer medium. Like
Yeah.
acrylic didn't exist 100 years ago. Like
Yeah.
acrylic is like the last 50, 60 years, I'd say. And the quality of acrylic has improved like tremendously. So to be a fine artist, like you pretty much had to use oil because that was just like what was best in terms of like the pigment, and it was what was taught. And now I think acrylic is taught just as much as oil. And so it really just depends on like what you're trying to do. And
Okay.
yeah.
Which one out of all the different types of paintings can allow you to have the most control or the most attention to detail?
It really just depends on how you're using it. I mean, I think oil is, I haven't used oil in a while, so I'm like forgetting like what the benefits are, because I just really got to a place with it where I got annoyed that it didn't dry fast enough for me. Although you can use different mediums to like make it dry faster, but there's a lot more. I don't know. I think some people argue you can get a little more like depth and stuff with oil, but I kind of disagree. I really think you can accomplish a ton with acrylic now. Acrylic just dries a lot faster.
Like how fast?
Like, you can use a hairdryer, it'll dry in like 2 seconds, which I use sometimes to make things
What if you
dry
just let
faster.
it air dry in a 70-degree room?
Probably like 30 seconds, like,
That fast?
yeah, it's
And oil's
not,
how long?
like weeks, months.
Are you serious?
Months, yeah. An oil painting, that oil painting's probably still not fully dry.
What do you mean not dry? It's been
Like
sitting for years.
chemically, it can take, maybe it probably is now, but like it can take an oil painting up to like 5 years to fully dry.
I think you made that 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
like chemically fully dry.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so that's why you're not supposed to even varnish. Technically, you're not supposed to varnish an oil painting until like years after you've painted it.
How do you varnish it?
It's
I
just
remember you
like,
talking about
it's
that.
just it's like what is varnish is a thing that you put on
Like a clear coat?
A clear coat, basically, that kind of makes it all the same like sheen, if you will, and also it's supposed to protect the painting.
Okay.
But if you put it on too soon, it can crack. But you don't really have that like acrylic is very like flexible.
Okay.
And there's just a lot less fuss with it. So
I will say that painting of the dog bow is so realistic, and it gets more realistic as you go up to his nose. By the time you get to his nose, it looks like his nose is wet, like how it normally would be. I'm like, it's unbelievable how you got that.
Thank you.
Do you just? I'm always fascinated with painters. I've never really painted. I've done so many art forms, and painting is like the one. I mean, I've painted houses. I could paint a house like nobody's business. But fine art painting, doing that type of work, is it just like you're seeing it in your head and you're just it's translating down your fingers and you're just kind of moving it according to what you feel and see? But
I think it really depends on the artist, because for me, I really need like a roadmap. And some people want to like have a blank canvas and if they're abstract artists, they want to just, like.
It's like experimental jazz.
Yeah,
They just want to give me an instrument, I'll just go.
Right. They want to just go, or they want to just like be more, it's a little more like, I don't know, just expressive in that way. I would say what I'm doing is definitely like a longer, more thought out thing. Like I said, a painting will be usually like stewing in my brain for a long time. And so the image is usually there, the idea in some capacity, like in my brain. Some people don't know until they start. I think I usually have it in my head from the beginning. Usually not fully fleshed out. It's almost never exactly what I want it to be. That's always the maddening part of being an artist. It's like you have an idea in your head and it very rarely is like translated exactly onto the canvas, and that's what keeps you coming back. But so I think there's usually like an idea and inspiration for me, and then I'll like, create those like, source images and stuff. And it's very much like a color thing for me, like I was saying before. So I just think it depends. Everyone's different and what gets them there. For me, it's just like, oh, I really want to like communicate this sort of feeling about a space. Like right now, it's very much like the space. And you'll notice like this summer, I did a lot of I did a lot of like ice cream shops for some reason this summer, and I was
Like
like
commissioned to, or you're just
no,
doing
I just
it?
was doing them. Like I did a lot. I did the Freeze, which is in Logan Square, and then I did like Margie's Candies, which is also in Logan Square, and I just really liked how like it just like is a quintessential like summer, and I was like, oh, I just feel like this captures like the summer feeling, and so I just really wanted to like communicate that, and like I found the way to communicate that through like this scene, so it's like, oh, I really want to capture that feeling of summer. Oh, this totally captures that for me. So yeah, it's kind of like music. I mean, I think music in a similar way, it's like, you can use the lyrics to express the feeling or thing, or you can use the instruments, or like a combination of it all.
Or the production
Or the
of it.
production of it. It's like,
Yeah.
just pick your tool, pick your entry point.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
I should have known the answer. I don't know. I've been wanting to get into, so I guess I'll start with acrylic then.
Just figure out your entry point, like what interests you about painting. Is it the shapes? Is it the color? Is it
I
the
think it'd be abstract.
abstract?
Because
Yeah.
I play music abstractly. Like when I play guitar, I was just talking about this. I like to do a lot of improvisational work, and I don't like to like write out guitar parts or do guitar solos. I like to just make it up as I go along within the key of the actual song and within time. So that's why I like playing with the band, because the drummer, bass, rhythm guitar give me that foundation where I could just dance around it and do whatever I want. So I feel like painting, I want to just do like probably abstract stuff.
Yeah,
just do whatever comes to my feelings and
Right.
mind,
And maybe like have something I always recommend with like an abstract painting is like you kind of need something to anchor you, or else it's like you're like an untethered, like, ship at sea. Like you're not knowing. And so sometimes you need to have like a little bit of an idea or structure or color
Okay.
to ground you in that. Like, okay, otherwise it can be like chaos.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually just recently did an abstract just to like make sure I could still do it.
It's so funny, dude. I got to make sure I can do an abstract, which is
Yeah.
like sounds counterintuitive. It's like it's
It
an
does.
abstract. You
But
can always
it's
do an
really hard.
I know it's not quite.
It is not
it's-
easy. Everyone thinks abstract is easy. I think abstract is actually like harder than
to make it feel right to you and
make
to
it
any
feel
viewer.
right.
Yeah.
That's really hard. And there's
Yeah.
no like isn't like, oh yeah, that looks realistic. Like that looks like the place. It's like, is that the place?
Yeah.
Is that the thing? I don't know.
It's true. An abstract would be harder.
When is
now
it
you say it.
done?
I just like improvisational music's way harder.
like
So
what-
much harder than playing a 4-chord progression with lyrics you wrote out with a 4/4 time. If you're just
Yeah.
making up stuff in the moment,
Yeah.
that takes a whole nother skill set to do.
And have it still like
Makes
sound
sense.
good and make sense.
Make sense and feel like it's bringing you places and invoking emotion. It's not easy.
No.
Yeah.
So I think abstracts, I'm like, oh, I just need to make sure I can still do that. Because it's like, I feel like, honestly, everyone always talks about like, oh, like he's an abstract artist, but he can still do realistic painting. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like the fact that he can do abstract like well is like, or she is like way more impressive to me sometimes than I think somebody who does, super representational, like realistic work. It's like, there is a roadmap to that, and not that everyone can do it, absolutely not, but it's like a little more prescriptive versus like abstract. Yeah, there's also still like kind of a model like composition. We know that'll look good and what won't, but it's still there's a lot more risk there of like an unknown, I think.
Yeah.
Like what the result's going to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's all interesting and good. There's no right or wrong to it, it's just what are you trying to express. So
That the right or wrong thing is what's hard to convey to people who aren't within the art world when they're
Yeah.
like, what, like they like when you get the like belittling art person who's just like, well, you're an artist, like what do you just sit around and like do this? It's like it's so hard to explain to someone,
yeah.
especially when you've been doing it for years and you kind of learn how to hone in. And it almost becomes hard to explain like how you actually do your thing because it's just such a part of who you are. Like I don't know, it's like
Right.
you almost feel like you're just being yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think I really struggled with at SAIC was like, and just in general, like trying to talk about like why I painted something. It's like, I don't know. This is just
Yeah.
spelt right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like this is, why do you paint that way? I don't know. Why do I sign my name the way I sign my name? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just kind of like, and painting is very much like, it literally is kind of like a signature. Like no one's going to paint something the exact same way. And so I think the more you can lean into being like, yeah, this is just my signature, this is my style, this is what comes naturally to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the easier it gets to be a painter, but I also think like you can really get to cool places if you just like, instead of trying to have your art look like something else, like figuring out what feels the most natural to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
with music, I'm sure. It's like
Absolutely.
what feels most natural.
Feels natural, and just because it's not something that follows a formula, like with painting, I always heard when you show someone who doesn't know a lot about art a painting, they're like, God, it doesn't look that like realistic or that good. Like the idea of a good painting reminds me of something they learned in the Renaissance. It has to be like a perfect representation of what it really is.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, a 2.5-minute pop song in the music world. It's like, I'm not saying it's bad. It's fine. Like, people also respect people who just make really good representations of what exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I like pop music. I like that world. I like rock and roll. I like the Beatles. Things that are made to where they're still done well, but it's more formulaic and straightforward.
Yeah, it fits into like a conventional mold.
It makes sense, and that stuff's cool. But like, it's a spectrum. You can also make very abstract things.
Yeah.
And it could be mixed media. It could be other parts connected to another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that to be a really wonderful part of the spectrum of human creativity.
I think at the moment my work definitely falls into a bit more of like, conventional or accessible. I like to use the word accessible because I do think because I do think there's still, if you want to take my work to a deeper level, like I think you can, but I think a lot of people can also just look at it and be like, oh wow, like that's really awesome, and it makes them feel some sort of way, but they're maybe not sure why, you know? And I think that I like that kind of art. Like I like the art that like makes you think, I like that. I don't know why, but I like that. Like that's interesting to me because I think it gets people, it kind of like tricks people into thinking a little bit outside of their box. It's like it's close to what they think it's supposed to be, but it's not quite. It's not quite. So they kind of have to like take it a step deeper of like, oh, that is kind of a style, or that is something a little different. It's not hyper realistic, but it is representational. So I think that's what's drawn me to the representational space, is I think there's sort of this interesting bridge you can create of like the non-art person entering into the space a little bit.
Yours does dance with that. It's not like exactly the shapes and sizes. It blurs into that, what we were talking about earlier, that feeling. It feels like you're feeling what you're seeing instead of experiencing exactly what you would see in a photograph,
Right.
Do you ever feel when you're working on art or you're done with it, like, are you under the belief that it's never finished but abandoned? You have to just kind of, or do you feel it complete when you finish your?
I think it's so funny because I have a couple paintings of mine that are like I hang in my apartment, mainly because they haven't sold, but but also at this point I've become very attached to them, and I it's so funny because there's this thing that happens where either a painting will hang on the wall and you'll look at it and you'll look at it and you'll look at it and you'll be like, oh my God, that's driving me insane, I have to fix that. Or just kind of you get to a place of like you're at peace with it. And so I actually highly recommend, and I do try to do this from time to time when I finish a painting, just like hang it in my space. And if I can live with it in my space and it doesn't drive me insane, like there's something about it that's just bugging me, then I'm like, oh, it's done. So I think that I do think a painting can be done. Like I'm not somebody who's gonna like sneak in and like try to fix something about the painting, like unless it's driving me insane. But that's why I always like to do the like hang it in the space test for a while. Yeah.
That's funny. I never thought about it. So you hang it in like your public space in your house?
Yeah, like in my living room, or
just for how long?
It just however long I can. Sometimes like I'm lucky and things do sell. But the worst thing that ever happens is sometimes I'm like, the painting sells, and then I'm like, there's this thing about it that's driving me nuts, but I already sold it, and I'm not gonna change this because the person bought it like this.
Yeah.
And that's so I've been trying to get like be a little more patient and like hold on to paintings longer. So ideally it would be a couple of months, but I think like a couple of weeks or a week or two is like enough for me to be
that's like your fact check. You leave it up there, and if you can get through it for a couple of weeks, like, okay, it's good.
It's good, yeah.
That's interesting. Like what people do with music is they'll, because when a song's done, it doesn't come out right away.
No, yeah.
So people will sit on it for a bit and listen to it later on, listen to it in different speakers. Like currently, I'm working on finishing a record that I am a part of, the band, and so I'm like being very sensitive with it. So I listen to it in my car. I'll take a break, 2 days, then listen to it on earbuds, walking through the park, and I hop around, and that's that version of like putting it
Yeah.
in the living room,
Yeah.
just letting it be there and stew. If I can get through it on a phone, laptop, earbuds, car, sound system, living room, and the people in the band are also doing that. That's like the homework I give them. Like, listen to it in places.
Different
Let me know what you
spaces,
think.
yeah.
If it passes all that, then like it's good. And there's still like some things you're like, oh, I wish we did this way or that way, but
It's always there will
yeah,
always
you can
be some
search
little
forever.
things.
Eventually, it's like it is what it is. It's what we did, and it's done, and like that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative thing. It's just nothing's ever going to be exactly what you want.
Oh no,
you know?
that's like what keeps you coming back. If it was
Yeah.
exactly perfect, exactly what you wanted, it'd be a really boring art medium. Like,
Yeah.
why would if you could create the perfect painting? Like, who would keep painting? You
Yeah,
know, I mean, some argue like the Mona Lisa is perfect painting, but I guarantee.
Why was that? Why do people say it's perfect painting?
Oh.
Why do people like that type of stuff so much? Just because it's old?
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you ask somebody who's like really studied it, they would say there's some like technical things about it that are just like really amazing and like kind of baffling. But I don't know. I think it's all up the eye of the beholder,
It is.
you know? So
It is.
I think it just
the eyes you just made. You're
yeah,
like
I don't know.
big eye roll.
Yeah, big eye roll. So.
Yeah, I'm over the like something's old, so it's good thing. It's like things have changed. We've changed. Technology's changed. People have grown.
I think it holds a place like in terms of like significance,
Absolutely.
like in culture and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
yeah, in terms of people being like obsessed with it, and, like you know, waiting in line to see it. I'm like,
Or worth like
yeah.
what is that even worth? The Mona Lisa. Does it have a price tag?
Billion. I have no idea.
$1 billion?
Probably. It's like priceless. Yeah.
I have
priceless.
a qualm with the fine art world, which sucks because I'm never going to escape it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be around me. But part of me is just like, is this just a money laundering scheme?
It is.
You heard it here first.
It is. Like no, they're absolutely like it is the next thing that rich people invest in when they can no longer invest in the stock market because they
Or
already have
real
enough money.
estate.
Or real estate, they're like invest in art has an insane. If you pick an artist well, if you pick art well, the returns are insane.
Yeah.
Like they really are. I mean, if you find an artist early on in their career, what other thing that can you buy for like $1,000 that can become worth like $1 million?
Like bow hanging in my living
Like,
room.
yeah, exactly. That could become worth $1 million in like, you know,
When you become famous.
When you become
Like,
famous.
I'm sawing the bow.
right. It's on the bow. Yeah, exactly. It's like what other? Yeah, it's a huge gamble, right?
Yeah.
But I think if that's what people get really obsessed with, like buying art and like up and coming artists, because they're like, oh my god.
But
like,
who decides? It reminds me
dumb.
so much of the music industry and the acting industry because it's like, who decides and why? Like,
Yeah.
there are some artists, their art could be featured in a really nice museum and they could literally make hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars per painting. What is the difference between that person and a person who makes amazing art,
Connections.
is liked, but they're only making $1,000 a painting? Like, seriously, what
It's
is-
connections.
connections, right? Who you know.
Yeah, who you know.
Right place, right time. The way you, maybe your
Presented
age,
it.
maybe the way you look,
Yep.
maybe the way, what education, like these things. It's like, why the you though?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel a lot about the music industry. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know a spectrum of musicians from people who have made it and they live off playing music to people who are just starting out. People do well in the cover scene area. People who do well in just doing solo shows and they get by and they've been living off doing solo. People who do production, they put on events, but they also play music and tour, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is none of it makes sense on fame.
No.
Like the people I know who have made it or do really well, their technical skill set relative to the classically trained musicians I know is nothing. They can't hold a candle to them.
Yeah.
These people have been playing music since they were 3. They could play violin, cello, upright bass. They play around the world in orchestras, but they don't really make any money. And then there's people who make like pop songs and they're living off playing music. I'm like, I don't see any rhyme or reason as to why one person is famous over the next.
Yeah.
Besides, you have a skill set and you've been putting in some effort, but it's really just the luck of the draw.
I also think it is the ability to communicate like a very clear like, why does anybody sign on to, like, I don't know, for example, like, why is Taylor Swift successful? She's created a lot of intrigue around her work. She's created a fan base of people where there's like, we kind of know what we're going to get from her or whatever, but like we still keep coming back for more. So there's like a predictability, but there's a bit of a mystery there too. And I think that, to me, that's what I feel like. If I've noticed some people who are successful, it's not necessarily who's the most talented, but it's the people who you know what you're going to get from them.
Yeah.
You can like predict that. They're like consistently giving you the thing that you want, but there's a bit of like a twist to it. And so you come back wanting more. And I think that is what I feel like at least the popular artists. Like obviously there's people who are, there's a little more nuance to, or maybe more like underground, but the people who are like big sensations or in music or in art, I feel like there's sort of this like, we know what the style is. Like we know what a Jeff Koons looks like. Like we know what a Van Gogh looks like. We know what that is. And so but it's still like, we still would love to see another Van Gogh painting. Like I wish he was still alive to paint another painting. It's like, there's sort of that, I think. And I think it's the people who can create, and I'm not saying it's also, obviously, there are people who can be lesser known who have that, but I think that
they're just not putting themselves out there.
Maybe they're not putting themselves out there. So I think it's a combination of the two. You kind of have to have that element, but then also it's like just getting your name out there, having it
full circle,
seen.
social media.
Yeah, so here we are. Yep.
Because now it's like there is a large amount of people putting themselves out there, but that's where it starts to get weird when there are people putting themselves out there. They're doing the work, making the connections, and it's still not, and they're talented and they make great music, and it's still not like taking off. And it's, because then in the music industry, it's not just Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Now it's Spotify, YouTube. How are your streams? How are your plays? iTunes, Pandora, Amazon. It's getting exhausting.
Yeah.
It's never ending.
Have you had any artists that have really like kind of blown up like while you've been? Beach Bunny. Do you know Anthony Vaccaro?
The drummer?
He's a bass player.
I don't know. I don't think I know him.
I went to high school with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of my he's my one of my best friends. Sorry, best friends, like good friends.
Okay.
So like they're really close, but like we hang out in the same circles and stuff. So anyway,
it's funny.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's been here. I'm sure he was.
They were at when they played. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny though? Like my students too. They whenever I have like the first day of school, and they're like, "Oh, so who have you worked with that's popping?" I always just go,
Beach Bunny.
You ever heard of that? And they're all like, "Oh my god, Beach!" Like, they freak out.
People are like obsessed with them now.
They're huge.
It's insane.
Huge.
I can't believe it. I mean, I'm not surprised Anthony's like so talented. I mean, she is obviously like the singer too.
Yeah.
But, like they're all amazing. But
I can't believe it either. Like they're like famous.
Yeah, they were on
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel.
They were on. I don't know if they were on Late Night with Colbert. They were on Jimmy Kimmel and I think Fallon. Late Night with Fallon, and then Rolling Stones. They've done Pitchfork, Riot Fest, Lollapalooza, Audio Tree.
Yeah.
But, before all that, they played DZ Fest.
They're the Divas. Yeah.
Which is just so funny.
That is so funny. I think I've heard of Panda Riot, too.
Panda Riot's a Chicago band.
Yeah.
A lot of these bands, a lot of them are still playing.
Yeah.
Some have done
the Peekaboos. I
pretty
feel like
well.
I've heard of them.
Some of Peekaboos turned into Lollygagger.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of these bands, some aren't bands anymore. I mean, with what I've seen, and this is just, because you came to one of the intimate evenings I did in the basement.
Yes, yeah.
So I used to do those every month. So between those monthly shows, I used to also have comedy shows, the 10 of these festivals, the Winterfest at my high school. I've had other Winterfests. And then, because I put one on at my old high school every year. And then the podcast, and then the live sessions, and the albums and EPs. I mean, it's tens of thousands of bands alone, like people within bands. So 3 to 5 people per band, tens of thousands of musicians and people just from that, not including attendees, patrons, other artists, food vendors. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's weird. Like, I feel weird on the internet. I'm like I'm more known in person.
Yeah.
And on the streets and like through.
You're such a facilitator of like all these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've like,
on the internet, I'm like this. Instagram makes no sense to me as far as like how it's not bigger when it's just bigger in reality. It's a strange one. It's a very strange
I think it's
one.
better that way.
it's certainly nice. Like I didn't say it, but like earlier when I asked you, like, oh, do you get recognized? It's like, oh, it's all that ever happens to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't get recognized on the internet, I get recognized in reality. And if I go to a coffee shop or if I go to any music venue, people start talking to me.
People start talking to you. Yeah, I'm sure.
Which is great because it's like I don't mind that at all. It's nice.
I'm also a hermit, so nobody sees me. So there's that. Like I don't go. People just see me on the internet, but no one sees me out. I like don't go anywhere. So this is a big night out.
Is it?
No, like kind of, but like yeah.
Left in months.
I've left in months. Yeah.
So why is that? You think?
I don't know. I'm just like very much a homebody. Like I mean, I go see my friends and stuff, but like I'm really bad about going to like art shows and stuff lately. Like I kind of have to get like pulled out. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of like, I think I still have a bit of imposter syndrome. I'm a little afraid to go. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like I think there's a bit of that. I also think there's just COVID happened and I got like kind of used to like being at home and got comfortable in my ways. And I don't know. I'm not mad about it. I kind of feel like I like being well rested and painting. So.
We should go to an art space, an art gallery.
Yeah.
We should go to one. If you know of anybody between who you know and then who I know, and my partner goes to a lot of those. She's in that world, so it'd be fun to go to one.
Absolutely.
I haven't been to one in a bit. I'm going Friday, but I got burnt out too between Columbia and the Art Institute. And then doing all the art stuff myself, like I put on those things. I would have artists sell artwork and communicating with them. So I kind of got burnt out on it too. But now I'm like kind of got everything figured out, and it'd be nice to.
They're also starting
again.
to happen again. They weren't happening for a long time. So it's interesting. I think there's a whole like art scene that's kind of emerging. That's kind of exciting. I think specifically in painting. Right now in Chicago, that's kind of, I feel like, a bit of a result of the pandemic. Like some of them were like established artists like before the pandemic, but others are like kind of like people like me who like were like, oh, I guess, I'm going to be at home and paint all the time. And here's what the result is. So I do think there's kind of like an up and coming group of people like that. So yeah.
I like it. So you're feeling good about it?
I am. Yeah, no, I'm feeling a lot more secure in myself as an artist than I did a year ago. And I think that that's just something that comes with like time and experience in my old age,
26.
My ripe old age.
26.
But
so young.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think it's insane what a year can do.
Yeah.
I think, which is amazing. And I'm just sort of like, I'm along for the ride, That's kind of how I feel at this point. So.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah. No,
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
I mean, it was to see you, at, 20 years old, 19 years old, talking to you about this stuff and art and
being very confused.
And I do understand that. And it's really cool that you took the leap. You are your own boss. You have success. Who cares about algorithms? You figured it out. Whatever happened,
happened.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
You're a good artist too. Very talented.
You.
Like that bow painting. Every time I'm like, man, how did you make that nose? It's so.
You're gonna have to post the bow painting whenever you post this.
I will. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This is so fun. I was like, I've never been a guest on a podcast. I have had my own podcast, but I've never been a guest. So this is fun.
Well, when you have yours, I can be a guest.
Thank you. Yes,
and that way you know what it's like to be on both sides.
Have you been guests on podcasts yet?
Not many. I mean, I think I've been on 3. I've been on 3 other ones, so not too many. But so before this one, this is the 56th episode of this. Before that, I did a podcast called Mandate Movies about film and movies because I'm a big fan. I think we did almost 2 years of that, so I think like 80 or 90 episodes. And then before that, I did Friends with Music podcast with my cousin Matt. We did that for 7 or 8 years. So like I think we did like 450 episodes.
Oh, I didn't realize that you've been like this much into podcasts for so long.
I've been doing it for 10 years. So I think I'm at like 600 episodes I've done.
Wow.
10 years, and I've did the production for all of them. So
oh my God.
Now it's just a walk in the park. And that's why I'm able to like do the recording, video, lighting, talking, pre and post production all myself because it's like I got the experience.
Yeah, it's just like
it's not
you do in your sleep. Yeah,
I really could.
You really could.
Yeah. So yeah, if you need help with setting up higher quality, I can help, and that'd be fun to talk on your version where you can dig into my mind.
Exactly. Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. It's been awesome watching your journey as well. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's really amazing. I feel like I'm not gonna lie, when I first like met you and you're like, oh yeah, come to like I have a festival in my backyard, and I was like, who is this person? Like I was like you're my TA, and I was like you invited me to like come to like I think one of the intimate evenings,
Yes,
and I was
did.
like, what is this? Like, you know, I was so confused. I was like, okay, and I was like, wow, he's like a whole thing that
Yeah.
you've created. It's like unbelievable, like
Thank
the
you.
people you've influenced and like the space you've created for music and art around you. So
Thank you very much.
Happy to be here.
I appreciate it. It's definitely hard to explain to people, especially,
Yeah.
you know, students. But I'd always invite people who I would talk to and realize like, oh, this person's different. And I think they need to get exposed to other stuff, and I think they would enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's usually who I would invite. But it was definitely, I could tell, like, they're probably freaked out or weirded out, but what am I supposed to do?
You
know?
just have you're just like the ultimate like facilitator.
Yeah.
I wasn't freaked out. I was more just like, what is he doing? Like, what is this? Like, you know, and it's just like it just is. It's crazy, like the world like of creativity you've like created around you. So kudos.
Thank you very much.
I'm
It
just
means a
alone
lot.
by myself in my studio, and you're like pulling people in, which is really cool.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
let's both keep doing what we
Let's
do.
do it.
All right. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Woo.